Lee Ho-yol, standing in front of the mirror, saw not his reflection, but a blonde character. He asked, confused, who he was and what his name was. The reflection, with black hair, replied that he was Lee Ho-yol, and the character introduced himself as Granfell Cloudy Arpheus Romeo, the heir to a great clan. Lee Ho-yol, thinking about it, realized that he had become the character he created 12 years ago in middle school. He recalled that he came up with Granfell under the influence of 8th grader syndrome, inspired by the VR game History of the Continent of Arcana. The game, legendary in the virtual reality genre, did not lose popularity until it was closed. Lee Ho-yol remembered how the company's CEO disappeared on the day of the closure, and Arcana became a reality. Rifts that appeared across the world released monsters that threatened humanity. Players synchronized with the characters gained skills to fight monsters, becoming heroes. Lee Ho-yol, who dreamed of becoming a gamer, couldn't afford a VR machine due to his father's financial ruin. Feeling ashamed, he realized the cruelty of the world and gave up the game. Now, awakened in Granfell's body, he remembered, disappointed, that the character was weak due to low stats. Created as a demon hunter, Granfell sought revenge for a family killed by a demon. Lee Ho-yol, considering the character a shameful part of the past, found himself in his body without the ability to resist. The boss, noticing his bright hair, asked if he had become an idol. Granfell responded by splashing coffee in his boss's face. Lee Ho-yol was terrified and thought he would be sued. Granfell proudly declared that nobles do not bow their heads. Lee Ho-yol, stunned, noticed that his thoughts were being distorted by the synchronization. He, realizing that he would not get a job, decided to become a player, despite his forgotten knowledge of the arcana. After studying the information, he learned that rankers earn millions, but the risks are high. Lee Ho-yol, while investigating, discovered that the demon hunters had disappeared after the destruction of the Akshan base. A class with weak characteristics, it was pumped up through quests, surpassing others only in battles with demons. He, having found an update to the game, learned about the appearance of demons in reality, causing obsession and destruction of the mind. Lee Ho-yol was surprised to realize that he was the last demon hunter left. Granfell's voice in his mind, calling him a weakling, declared that he was not running from demons. Lee Ho-yol, succumbing to Granfell's pride, decided to fight, promising to personally send the demons to hell. Several years have passed since the great cataclysm that changed the world. People, having recovered from their losses, revived the streets, adapting to the new reality. However, the darkness, feeding on the emotions of the reunited people, attracted demons. Nam Chol, the leader of the tank group, waited for the rest of the team near the rift. Granfell, also known as Lee Ho-yol, joined them. Nam Chul, showing the rift, a portal with a purple glow, explained that ordinary people cannot interact with it. Granfell assessed the rift and realized that it was suitable for players of levels 35 to 40, but with his level 55 it was a doable task. He, recalling the information, knew that the average level of those attacking the rifts was 200, and he was far from such heights. A team of high-level players welcomed him. Seo Jong-yeon, noticing that the other group was already inside the rift with a 20% destruction rate, explained that at 100%, the monsters would break out into the real world. The players, having prepared themselves in 5 minutes, decided to move out. Nam Chul, pleased with the team's unity, remembered how he survived with his 3 sisters, learning to cheer himself up. Granfell, due to the character's nature, confidently stated that there was nothing to worry about with him. The team ignored his arrogance and entered the rift, finding themselves in an underground null food storage facility. So Chung-yeon, surprised, did not notice the monsters, but Nam Chul, reassuring her, said that the other group had already passed, and suggested another route. Granfell, sensing something was wrong, became wary. The team, noticing the gnolls, prepared for battle and rushed forward. Lee Ho Yol, analyzing, noted that their group consisted of a tank, 2 melee fighters, and a mage. The tank, defending, attracted monsters. The fighters went on the defensive, and the mage dealt damage. Considering himself useless without a good weapon, he decided not to engage in battle. Suddenly, an arrow flew towards him, and a wave of gnolls pounced on the team. They fought back, barely holding on. Granfell, having parried the arrow, declared that these wild dogs needed to be trained. He, who was usually not one to resort to violence, decided that the whip was necessary. Seo Jong-yeon, frightened, didn't know what to do. Granfell, telling her to calm down, said that he would deal with the monsters breaking through and asked her to use her strongest skill. She shouted for everyone to run and fired a fire arrow, hitting the gnoll. The team, hiding, rejoiced at their success. Granfell, noticing a silver arrow on the battlefield, wondered whether he should take it. Seo Jong-yeon, having given healing potions to her partners, prepared for new monsters. Choi Young-hoon, a melee fighter, lashed out at Granfell, asking why he didn't help, and led them into a trap. Nam-chul laughed evilly and did not answer. Choi Jung-hoon furiously asked what was so funny, saying that without his brother, Nam-cheol was worthless. Seo Jong-yeon, frightened, noticed that the fire had disappeared. Nam-chul continued to laugh and called them idiots. Suddenly, Granfell's natural enemy skill activated, increasing combat power against demons. He, realizing that Nam-chul was a demon, heard him confirm that the team had finally figured it out. Inside the rift, the team is frozen in shock after learning that their leader, Nam-cheol, is a demon. Han Sung-wook, one of the fighters, approached Granfell from behind and expressed disbelief, not understanding how the captain could be a demon. Suddenly, the crew members began to writhe in pain, being consumed by a demonic force from within. Granfell, while observing, received notification that Demon's gaze was causing fear due to low mental resistance. Nam-chul smirked and enjoyed their horror, calling people pawns who created illusions of fear. Lee Ho-yol, struggling under the pressure, hit Nam-cheol. The demon, surprised, asked if he was afraid of death, threatening not only him but others as well. Lee Ho-yol, realizing that the demon's armor could not be penetrated head-on, looked for a weak spot, continuing to attack. Nam-chul shouted and called the people hypocrites, recalling Granfell's recent friendliness. Suddenly, he received a powerful blow and fell to the ground, not expecting that an ordinary person with a silver sword would deal double damage. Granfell, in cold blood, ordered the demon to be silent, declaring that he did not speak to prey, and put his sword to its head. Nam-chul, in confusion, remembered his childhood, the injuries from the dangerous fracture, and conversations with his younger brother, Nam-tai-min. He, advising to avoid dangerous rifts, offered to become an analyst in his guild. Nam-chul, dreaming of being worthy of his brother, suffered from comparisons with him. People, admiring Tai-min's success, asked if Nam-cheol was really the older brother, calling on him not to disgrace the younger one. Wanting to become the pride of the family, he succumbed to the demon, whose gaze, taking advantage of his low mental resistance, turned him into a possessed person. The team, without resistance, was also absorbed. In the real world, Nam-cheol threatened to kill Granfell without caring about the body's owner. Granfell, realizing his pride, saw the spirit of the real Nam-chol. He swung his fist and threw the demon away. Nam-chol, waking up in his body, couldn't believe that he had survived with such wounds. Granfell, reminding the team that fear fuels demons, urged them not to be afraid. He, emphasizing that demon hunters are only strong against them, retained this logic despite the years. Lee Ho-yol, disappointed, noticed that no items dropped after winning. Later, Nam-tae-min, while talking with his brother, learned about the raid where Nam Cheol was possessed. Tae Min, not believing it, considered it nonsense based on rumors. Nam Chul, having confirmed the possession, left his brother in a stupor. Nam Tai Min, stunned, asked Nam Cheol if he was serious about becoming an analyst in the guild, reminding him that he had previously been against it. Nam Chul, surprised by his brother's disbelief, felt disappointed by their alienation. Nam Tai Min, asking to speak without sarcasm, heard from his older brother that he was only joking. Nam Tai Min asked in clarification whether the decision to become an analyst was a joke. Nam Chul seriously replied that he realized his limits and realized that chasing after his brother was pointless, deciding to go his own way. Nam Tai Min, intrigued, wondered who could have influenced his brother so much, especially considering his high mental resistance that allowed him to resist the demon. He, noting that Nam Chul mentioned a dagger instead of magic, was surprised since there were thousands of classes in Arcana, but none came to mind for a low-level rift. Nam Chul, admitting that the story sounded unbelievable, confirmed it. Nam Tai Min interrupted and said that he trusted his brother because he taught him how to attack bosses, manage a guild, and recruit players, helping him become a leader. He immediately offered a contract and called Nam Chol the Pride of Gaon. Nam Chol, touched, asked not to embarrass him. Nam Tai Min showed the contract and waited for a reaction. Nam Chol was horrified when he saw the conditions. Meanwhile, Granfell, a.k.a. Lee Ho Yol, noticed that his level had increased by 12 points after hunting the demon. He ignored this and stated that such trifles did not bother him. Lee Ho Yol, thinking, didn't know how to distribute the attribute points. Deciding to think about it later, he noticed Granfell begin cleaning, stating that a clean environment cleared the mind. The character, even after preparing dinner, led an aristocratic lifestyle. Lee Ho Yol, realizing that character settings affect reality, remembered Granfell's talents: genius in magic, the ability to repeat spells with one glance, high intelligence, and physical potential. Having received a long message from Nam Chul, he decided to postpone its analysis. Granfell, concentrating, began to test his magical abilities, writing down spells in a notebook. Lee Ho Yol, delighted, realized that the character was a munchkin, the embodiment of school fantasies. Nam Cheol and Nam Tai Min, while discussing Granfell, offered him to join the Gown Guild, but he refused. Nam Tai Min, amazed, assumed that another guild had made a better offer. He boasted that Gaon was offering a house, a car, and a 95% share, wondering who could beat the terms. Nam Chul explained about the magical tower in Seoul that attracted foreign guilds. Nam Tai Min, upon hearing about this for the first time, was outraged that someone was encroaching on his territory. He shouted that even the local guilds would not offer better and demanded that his brother tell him about Granfell. Nam Chul thoughtfully described him as a quirky aristocrat from a fantasy series. Lee Ho Yol, watching Granfell train, understood the basics of magic, allowing him to cast any spell with enough mana. After completing the check, he distributed the points, 2 each for strength and dexterity, 7 for mana, and 2 for luck, doubling it for prosperity. Remembering that Granfell became a demon hunter to avenge his family, Lee Ho Yol sighed and regretted the backstory he had made up. When he woke up, he saw a notification for the class quest, prelude to the counterattack, realizing that it was more than just a coin on the road. He, realizing that even ordinary quests are rare, was surprised by the appearance of a class quest, available only to one player in the class. While browsing the Arcana news, he learned that a first-rank paladin had received a similar quest, which made him famous, as such quests could elevate anyone to the top of the game. Li Ho Yol at level 67 thought there was no chance of such a quest, but he realized that he was the last remaining demon hunter after the fall of Akshan. He, remembering the Akshan base, imagined it as great, but the reality turned out to be different. The NPC instructor greeted him and announced that the acceptance ceremony would take place upstairs and told him to go up. Granfell, standing in front of the huge building, questioned his sanity, as the quests required him to repeat grueling tasks like climbing a mountain and descending to a dining hall. He complained that demons were attacking the mind and training was strengthening it. Li Ho Yol, recognizing that his 8th grade syndrome was getting worse, decided to explore the essence of the quest. An association formed from former Arcana developers analyzed updates that affected reality. The workers, discussing, hoped that the updates would not appear. But at 8 a.m., a new update caused panic. The rift in the Count's family's territory gave birth to monsters. Bloody bandits, beasts, soldiers, knights, servants, and the named Count Ascura, a level 430 vampire demon. The developers, in horror, compared him to the strongest level 403 player, calling the update unbalanced. They, realizing that neither the rankers, nor the guilds, nor the association could cope, decided that even the magic tower would not help, since NPCs do not interfere without threatening the tower. The developers, in despair, called the task impossible, predicting the end of humanity if the rift reached 100%. One of them, calling for no panic, reminded that previous updates were feasible, but this breaks the balance, and only a miracle can save it. Granfell, continuing the quest, completed the task, 1,000 push-ups and other exercises. Li Ho Yol, exhausted, didn't understand why the quests were so strange, but after completing the task, he felt the joy of accomplishment. He, thanks to Granfell's pride, did not give up and looked forward to the new quest. For a week, he trained daily, completed assignments, and received new ones. Li Ho Yol, not believing that he would be able to complete them again, relied on Granfell's characteristics. After receiving notification that the week's quest had been completed, he earned 2 points of strength and 2 points of agility. He was amazed, knowing that such points were worth millions, and he got them without leveling up. Granfell confidently stated that he was capable of completing quests at least 10 times a day. Li Ho Yol stopped him and called it too much. The radio, announcing the update, announced that guilds were abandoning the raid on the rift with Count Ascura, a level 430 vampire demon, the most powerful monster. The Korean branch, which remained silent, did not comment. Li Ho Yol, in tension, realized the difficulty of fighting demons due to their negative effects. He, realizing that the quest offered to defeat Ascura, panicked, believing the enemy to be invincible. His heart, kept steady by Granfell, did not give in to fear. Granfell, confident, called the demons pathetic, saying they were wasting his time and would be punished. Li Ho Yol, having foreseen this, realized that Granfell was eager for battle. Li Ho Yol, shocked to receive the class quest Prelude to Counterattack, couldn't believe that such rare quests given by NPCs were given to him, a level 67 demon hunter, in the world of Arcana, where quests have become rare due to the lack of NPCs. Having decided to go to Russia, where, according to the news, Count Ascura is, Granfell headed to the magic tower with a portal that allows instant movement. Li Ho Yol, who suggested taking a taxi, was ignored by Granfell, who, considering the time wasted, went on foot. He, noticing the absence of the down jacket, thought that Granfell would come to his senses, but he, instead, took a huge amount of green tea, insisting on the importance of tea drinking. One reporter, discussing with a colleague, doubted that the Gaon Guild would show up, since the magic tower was nearby and the portals were only accessible to a few rankers. Suddenly, Gaon, including Nam Tai Min, appeared, surrounded by reporters. They, questioning, asked if Gaon had found a way to defeat Ascura. Nam Tae Min responded by saying that they were not fully prepared, but they were going first to get ahead of their competitors, and suggested that other guilds challenge the rift themselves. The guild Shining appeared with the player Rocks, level 399, the second in rank. Their leader, complaining about the crowd, noted Gaon's rudeness, linking the influx of guilds to the magic tower. Nam Chul, calming Nam Tae Min, advised him to act with caution. Nam Tae Min, remembering Lee Ho Yol's words about being able to cope, asked if they would meet at the tower. Granfell, riding in a minibus, watched the broadcast where a level 30 player was confronted by a level 300 monster. He, having studied the video, realized that magic is activated in 3 stages: mana collection, intervention, and manifestation. On the bus, his hand burst into flames, causing the driver to shout, forbidding spells. The passengers gasped and panicked. Lee Ho Yol, not expecting success, wanted to apologize, but Granfell, confident, said that he had the flames under control and would stop if fear overwhelmed the passengers. Lee Ho Yol, satisfied with the new skill, checked the stats, but no magic skills appeared. Arriving at the tower, he was struck by its hall, which was different from its external appearance, and felt the simplicity of portal magic compared to fire magic. The reporter, accidentally pushing him into the portal, was surprised. Nam Tae Min, noticing this, shouted that he was ruining Gaon's reputation. Nam Chul, seeing someone similar to Lee Ho Yol, began the briefing, describing the rift. The outer circle, levels 240 to 279% destruction. The inner circle, the Count's family's territory around 30, and the central circle, Ascura's fortress. He warned that the breakthrough would cause a fortress to appear in the real world. Reporters who entered the portal confirmed that they were in Russia, surrounded by players. Granfell, finding himself in front of them, ordered them to retreat before his patience ran out. He, entering the rift on the outskirts of the territory, felt relief, hoping for warmth. There he saw Leonie Bellucci, a top 100 level 348 player, rudely brushing off reporters, demanding that they not irritate her. Lee Ho Yol, finding himself in the cold outskirts of the Count's family's territory in Russia, felt a piercing wind, but Granfell, on the contrary, declared that this was the perfect time for hunting. Feeling his rage growing, level 230 blood wolves appeared in front of them, and Lee Ho Yol, realizing that his character was only level 67, was still confident of victory thanks to the skill Natural Enemy. Granfell, realizing that the wolves were servants of Count Ascura, called them a mistake that had chosen the wrong master. He, activating the sword, announced that out of kindness, he would help the monsters feel the fear of their prey. Using Vampire Hunt, he killed all the wolves. Meanwhile, Leonie Bellucci, fighting with the same wolves, furiously destroyed them, noticing that they did not feel fear or pain. She, surprised by their unnatural behavior, heard a distant, frightening battle. Her team, discussing, suggested that the spider attack was strange, and there was something behind it. Leonie, resolutely, ordered to follow her to find out the truth, and the team moved on. Granfell drew his arrow and felt the mana on its tip. He, realizing that the arrow was not the best, decided to research mana, intervene, and manifest it by releasing a fire arrow, which, upon hitting the target, caused a fire. Leonie, upon arriving at the scene, looked at the flames in amazement and noticed Granfell standing in a suit and shoes, drinking tea in the middle of the fire. Her team, not understanding what kind of magic skill he was using, assumed that he was a streamer broadcasting from the rift. Leonie, agreeing, decided that he was acting for the sake of the guild. She came closer and shouted that the place was dangerous, demanding an answer, otherwise she would shout louder. Suddenly, her team, warning of danger, pointed out new enemies, bloody bandits of level 230 who appeared in huge numbers. Leonie, fighting back, concentrated her power into her sword, calling on her enemies to worry about herself, and swung her weapon. Suddenly, the other team shouted out that the enemy was attacking from above. A crowd of bandits surrounded them from all sides. One of the guild, in a panic, told Leonie that they were trapped and didn't know what to do. Granfell, calmly continuing to drink his tea, ignored the shouts of the crew asking if he was asleep. He thought about it and decided to try manipulating the mana in the thermos, exploring, interfering, and manifesting it. Knowing that his mana was not enough for a normal skill, he assumed that a spell without a skill was possible. Concentrating, he put all his mind into it, and the lid of the thermos flew up, causing a blinding glow. It turned into a powerful explosion, destroying all the monsters, crushing them with stones. Leonie was stunned and thought it was alchemy, never having heard of such a skill that could create such a wall. Granfell intervened and stated that this was not a skill, but real magic. Leonie, amazed, thought it was alchemy, not having heard of such a skill. Granfell explained that this was real magic. The team, stunned, did not understand who he was, wondering if he was an alchemist who created a huge stone wall. They, considering alchemists to be artisans, could not believe in his magic. Lee Ho-yol thought that changing the shape of objects through mana was similar to alchemy, but he noticed that the enemies were attacking from the uncovered side. Granfell, putting aside his tea, ordered the crew to attack. Lee Ho-yol concentrated his mana and drew his bow. One fighter, finding a wounded partner, shouted about the need for a healer. Turning around, he realized that he would not have time to dodge the enemy's attack, preparing for death. Granfell fired and killed the enemy with one arrow. Leonie, not understanding whether he was an archer or a mage, was surprised by his fiery arrow, which knocked down even more enemies. She, puzzled by his abilities, including alchemy, could not determine his class. Having defeated the enemies, the fighter informed Leonie that there were no new opponents. She, while delighted, was still irritated by Granfell, who, dressed in a suit, did not answer questions, did not look tired, and saved them, although he did not seem to be a rancor. After some thought, she decided that she should thank him, despite his ignoring her. Noticing his gaze, she turned away, embarrassed, denying sympathy, but felt that he continued to look. Granfell, noticing her look, said that she could look as much as she liked, but there was no tea for her. Leonie froze in bewilderment. Reporters who made their way into the rift reported that they were in Russia, in front of a rift that had captured the world's attention because of a level 430 boss. They explained that the Territory Edge rift was one of 3, and hundreds of them needed to be cleared to reach the Count's family's territory and fortress. The Shining and Gaian guilds competed to clear the rift, and the first one to clear it would receive glory. The reporter, entering the director's office, asked for coffee. In a dark room, the director, having learned that the Shining Ones were in the lead, ordered an interview to be prepared. The assistant, noticing that the rift had turned blue, indicating that it was being cleared, ran outside. The director came out and confirmed that the fault had been cleared, but he did not know who had done it from behind the trees. The assistant contacted the director and said that it was Berserk, a 32nd rank guild that surprised everyone. He, noticing a Korean among them, which is strange for a European guild, said that the reporters were running for an interview. The assistant ran up to Granfell and asked if he was connected to Berserker and what had happened in the rift. Granfell, irritated, ordered him to step aside before his patience ran out. Reporters approached Leonie, the leader of Berserk, asking for comments. Surprised by their victory, Leonie, refusing to speak, ordered the team to answer. One fighter, surprised by her decision, began to answer, but Leonie, pointing to Granfell, said that he had cleared the rift. She, not finding him after the fight, learned from a reporter that he had left, saying that he would return home. Reporters, stunned by Granfell's departure, could not believe that he had simply left the rift. Leonie Bellucci, irritated, told reporters that she had tried to give an interview, but he had left before everyone else. She, screaming in frustration, suddenly noticed the Gaian Guild, who had completed the second cleanup. Nam Tae Min, the leader of Gaian, when asked by reporters for comment, learned that they were congratulated on their second place. He was shocked and couldn't believe that the berserker had overtaken them. At the Gaon camp, the team was watching the news when they heard Leonie say that Gaon was not the only strong guild in Korea. Nam Chul, amazed, confirmed her words. Nam Tae Min furiously shouted, demanding to know what was so special about berserk, calling their nonsense and losing his appetite. Nam Chul guessed and said that Leonie probably met a strong player in the rift. Nam Tae Min thoughtfully mentioned the guild Mythology from 41st place, but Nam Cheol objected and said that they were still in the rift. Nam Tae Min, even more furious, did not understand who she was talking about. Nam Chul, thinking, suggested that it could be Grandfell. Meanwhile, Grandfell, back home, took a hot shower, finding it ideal for such moments. Lee Ho-yeol, observing the character, found his behavior strange, seeing how he started cleaning again due to the accumulated dust. He, considering Grandfell crazy, noticed that he even prepared food. Deciding not to sleep, Lee Ho-yeol checked his loot. A dull level 180 saber, useless, but noted that his level had risen from 67 to 86. He, realizing that clearing a high-level rift gave 19 levels, noted that magic required less mana than skills, allowing it to be used more often, although mana regeneration was slow due to weak equipment. The demon hunters made the fight more difficult without relying on skill, and he mentally thanked the group, not knowing who they were. Grandfell, blaming himself for weakness, said that he proves the opposite if he is underestimated and exceeds expectations if he is overestimated. Lee Ho-yeol, surprised, remembered this character trait. Grandfell's next target was the Earl's family's territory. He, emphasizing that there is no time to relax, decided to develop his fighting skills, inspired by the movements of Leonie Bellucci with her two blades. However, remembering the Akshan base and the bad feeling, he first decided to wash the dishes before training. Lee Ho-yeol, surprised, asked if there would be time to sleep, but Grandfell, running around the city, listened to the news. The journalist reported that the outskirts of the territory were cleared by 95%, and the territory of the Count's family would soon open. But the degree of destruction suddenly jumped to 60%, despite its closure. Worried experts warned of the risk of a breakout. Nam Tae Min, not believing that the destruction had reached 60% in one day, asked how this was possible. Nam Chul explained that the clearing slows down when there are strong monsters. Nam Tae Min, shocked, couldn't believe their power-up. Nam Cheol, hesitantly, suggested collecting more data. The reporters, alarmed, discussed with the director that the cause was unknown and that a breakthrough would threaten the lives of players and civilians. The director, calling it not just a question of success, called for finding the cause. Grandfell, reading the news, realized that the information about Akshan explained the situation. Vampires, sharing power through blood, return it to Askura after the death of monsters, strengthening it and accelerating destruction. Lee Ho-yeol, realizing that a raid on the Count's territory could instantly destroy the fortress's rift, became alarmed. Grandfell, calling Askura unworthy of the title, stated that an aristocrat does not take away what is given. He, having proclaimed himself a judge, promised to punish Askura for dishonor. Lee Ho-yeol, admiring the coolness of the words, asked when they would sleep. Grandfell shouted that he would sleep after death and headed towards the Count's family's territory with levels 350 to 400, where there were 5 hours left until the breakthrough. Reporters, starting a new broadcast before the rupture of the Count's family's territory in Russia, reported that the degree of destruction had reached 70%, leaving less than 5 hours before the breakthrough. Fedor, reporting at 3:48 a.m., noted that numerous guilds had gathered in front of the rift. He explained that unlike the outskirts with over 200 rifts, there are only 30 exits here, which is why several guilds claim one rift, and the experience is distributed according to the contribution. The reporter followed Nam Chul and secretly filmed him, catching his words about the inevitable competition due to the small number of faults. Nam Chul, without worrying, said that the Shining Ones had gone north where they might encounter the United Heavens. Nam Tai Min, inspired, noted that they could compete for first place with Second Son and Boyoma. He was surprised and said that they were noticed after a quick cleanup. The reporter, hiding behind a rock, overheard the fourth-ranked guild Inazuma appear. Nam Tai Min, furious, asked what they were doing here. Hisagi Kazuma, a level 376 magic spearman and the leader of Inazuma, noticed that Gaon had appeared in front of their rift. He, recalling Inazuma's refusal to open a branch in Korea, said that a midday flight was better. Nam Tai Min got angry and asked if they really wanted to go around them. Hisagi, in response, asked if he wanted to stop them. The reporter, frightened, realized that the situation was serious and was afraid of becoming the only streamer with such a conflict. The director, running out of cover, announced that Gaon and Inazuma had entered the same rift, predicting a mad competition. Other reporters, noting that the Shining Ones were confronting the United Heavens, added to the excitement. Nam Chul turned to his brother and said that he understood his feelings, but that breaking the rift was more important than competition. Nam Tai Min shouted out Inazuma as fourth and Gaon as fifth, emphasizing the rivalry between the heads. Hisagi in sixth place and himself in 11th. He, deciding that it was stupid to leave, led the Gaon into the Eastern Rift together with the Inazuma. The two guilds, known for their feud, have attracted attention due to the national rivalry between Korea and Japan. The Northern Rift went to the Shining and United Heavens, and the Southern one to the Berserker, Second Son, and Boime. The level of destruction, reaching 80%, caused fear throughout the world. Granfell, sitting calmly on a makeshift throne, drank tea inside the rift of the Earl's family's territory. Having realized from the previous rift the risk of being left without mana, he looked for ways to use it effectively. Realizing that alchemy-based magic could change the shape of objects, he created a cup and table from the stones, but noted that the parts increased mana consumption, making it impractical in combat. He, deciding not to overestimate his strength, encountered the Count's level 300 soldiers. Surprised by their weakness, he called them worthless, crushing them with rocks with minimal mana expenditure, using the return to the original state. Deep in the territory, Nam Tai Min, fighting with the team against the guards, noticed that there were few monsters, no more than 10 per path. The team, discussing, noted that the Inazuma, sailing separately, met the same number. They, wondering why there were so few enemies, suddenly encountered their opponents. Hisagi Kazuma turned to Nam Tai Min and asked if he really didn't want peace. Nam Tai Min, indignant, asked why he was speaking like an old friend. Hisagi, upset, said that he did not understand his opponent's hatred, wanting to kill him. Nam Tai Min contacted the analyst and reported that he was in ruins that looked like a city square. Nam Chol, confirming that it was a square, shouted for them to leave immediately. Suddenly, the ground shook as the Count's level 350 knights attacked in great numbers. Nam Tai Min, stunned, considered the Count's knights on the plain to be a curse, realizing that their strengthening made victory impossible even with tanks. Hisagi Kazuma, turning to the enemy, said that he did not want this, but they would have to cover each other since the monsters were attacking from all sides, requiring unity. Nam Chul, warning his younger brother, noted that the knights had inflicted great damage even on the United Heavens, and that it was impossible to fight on the plain, suggesting to lure them into narrow passages. Nam Tai Min, confused, did not know where to find such passages. Suddenly, he felt a blue aura surrounding him without understanding its source. In place of the aura, a huge stone plane appeared, similar to a rock or a pillar, destroying all enemies. Nam Chul, horrified, did not understand what had happened, but decided that it was the work of Li Ho Yol, whom he had told his brother about. Reporter Hui Shan continued to broadcast while following the gown, noticing strange tracks on the plane left 5 minutes ago. Hearing a loud bang, he turned around and ran to the place where the stones were falling. Nam Tae Min, in bewilderment, saw a field covered with stone pillars created by one spell of Granfell. Hisagi Kazuma, amazed, wondered how much magic this man, dressed in pants and shoes without equipment, had. One of the Inazuma shouted out that the enemies were breaking through the pillars, but they began to immobilize the knights. Nam Tae Min, angry, decided to put his gratitude aside and activated the skill Barbarian Berserker, which increases attack and reduces damage. With this skill, he confidently cut the monsters into pieces. Hisagi Kazuma, realizing the opportunity, ordered his team to destroy the enemies, and they rushed into battle. The reporter, not understanding what was happening, wondered who this person was, a support or a mage. Granfell, using reverse magic, created stones, single-handedly holding off the cavalry. Hui Shan, in shock, asked the audience if this was real. Granfell, taking out a silver dagger, finished off the last enemy, regretting the loss of durability. He thought about it and decided to change the shape of the dagger, turning it into a cup, just like he had done with the stone. The cup, having become strong, returned to the shape of a dagger without losing its strength. He struck, made sure that the durability was preserved, and received a level increase. Lee Ho-yol, delighted, realized that no repairs would be needed. The guild, pleased with the victory, ended the battle. Nam Tae Min, watching Granfell, recognized him and, overcome with greed, decided not to let him go, especially after the attention of Inazuma. He, approaching, noted that the result of 10 against 0 was impressive and suggested discussing further plans. Hui Shan, while streaming, asked Granfell for an interview, but noticed a lack of magical aura in his gaze, which puzzled the viewers. Reporters immediately surrounded the area where Granfell was located and began to bombard him with questions. Nam Tae Min, deciding that the moment was right, walked over, extended his hand, and introduced himself, mentioning the Gown Guild and the recent announcement about cooperation. Granfell responded angrily that he was not observing etiquette by not shaking hands in return. The reporters, horrified by his reaction, watched as he angrily demanded to be allowed to pass. The news, discussing the mystery player, noted his refusal to answer due to manners. The Shining Guild base, watching this, expressed surprise. Rox, the leader of the Shining Ones, second in the ranking, did not understand what was happening. Camilla, ranked 7th and an archer for the Shining Ones, admitted that she knew nothing about magic, and Dmitri, ranked 8th, went into hysterics and said he had no answer despite the leader's questions. Camilla, watching Granfell, suggested inviting him to the guild. Dmitri, indignant, accused Rox of envy because of the failed cleanup of the county, noting that newcomers often attract attention for ratings. Rox, ignoring them, thought about something else. Jesse Haynes, the 4th ranked, a level 397 Shining Mage who was doing a class quest, noticed that Granfell's magic was similar to hers, but different. Rox, praising her observation skills, received a joking response from her about how funny this guy was. The Berserker base, in a panic, discussed Leonie Bellucci's words, claiming that Granfell was not an ordinary player. The Inazuma Guild, in confusion, called someone, deciding that the silver-haired man must be obtained. Hisagi Kazuma, confident, took on the task. The news aired and reported that after clearing the outskirts, the Shining Ones in the United Heavens were the first to clear the dungeons without incident. The Count's Citadel Rift, at 72% destruction, has players from all over the world preparing for battle. The tension caused by the risk of Russia's demise was felt by all, and reporters wished the players good luck. Granfell, returning home after a grueling battle, turned on the news to find himself in a long coat and suit with no visible equipment. Journalists discussing him suggested that he was using hidden magical items or techniques. Granfell, thinking, realized that he simply didn't have the equipment. The expert commenting said that his timely intervention, which immobilized the enemies and changed the landscape, saved the Gaon and Inazuma. Granfell mentally noted that he had simply run out of mana. The expert continued by emphasizing his concern for the guilds, as if urging them to show themselves. Lee Ho-yol, glad that his bad temper was not mentioned, began to study the inventory. He, having discovered the cursed blood necklace, realized that it was a demonic item with a sealed curse. Items such as the lottery could provide powerful effects when removing the curse, but were expensive and were often discarded by players. He, remembering the skill exorcism of the demon hunters, thought about summoning a demon into his mind, as the demons themselves do. Knowing the risk of possession with low mental strength, he decided it could help in combat. Suddenly, Nam Cheol's phone rang. Lee Ho-yol, afraid that Granfell would start grumbling, did not want to answer. He, deciding to send a message to avoid trial, wrote no as before. The Gaon, stunned by deja vu, discussed this. Nam Tae-min, apologizing for the past, offered normal conditions. But seeing Granfell on the news, ignoring questions due to fatigue, he realized that he would not answer. He, focusing on Count Asker, noted that the destruction had reached 83%, leaving 10 minutes until penetration. Suddenly, hearing a rumble, he realized that an earthquake had begun. Breaking news reported that the Count's citadel's rift, 80% destroyed, had burst open, and the citadel had appeared in Russia, taking more than 200 lives. The U.S. and EU, recommending closing borders, have restricted players. Nam Tae-min, having got out, saw a destroyed citadel without a trace of the monster. Granfell, already on the spot, realized that a breakthrough had occurred. The reporters and guilds, noticing him, watched in amazement as he entered the citadel without fear. He, calling the Count a lousy statue, was the first to step into the territory, preparing for battle. Lee Ho-yol entered the territory of the citadel of Count Ascura and immediately assessed the size of the courtyard, in which the main element was a huge statue. The statue could be called the center of the courtyard. Its height exceeded 10 meters. Suddenly, the statue began to move, and the sound served as an alarm signal to the assembled knights. Lee Ho-yol knew that it would be more logical to step back and analyze the situation, but Granfell's inner firmness kept him in place and directed him forward. The Shining Guild members responded to the noise. Camilla recognized the distinctive sounds from old recordings, and Jessica rushed to the source at random. Rox tried to stop Jessica, but she walked past him and hurried forward. Lee Ho-yol came closer, and with one precise movement smashed the statue. The material turned out to be of low quality. The construction was fragile. The fall and destruction of the statue acted as a trigger, opening the way into the citadel and activating an unknown security system. At that moment, Lee Ho-yol received a notification about a class quest, and it became clear that destroying the guard was a condition for penetrating deeper into the castle. Granfell didn't pause to think and moved inside, despite the risk of encountering a strong threat. The banquet hall greeted him with dark portraits, the looks from which created a feeling of suffocation and anxiety in those who looked at them. The Gaon members felt the impact of the paintings earlier than others, some experiencing difficulty breathing and confusion. Nam Chol quickly recognized the source of the problem and took drastic measures, ordering the portraits to be burned, which made things much easier for the team. He explained that the castle was filled with traps in its design. Paintings, statues, and furniture contained a demonic aura and affected the mind. Nam Tae-min realized the seriousness of the situation and noted that if entering caused such symptoms, then the deeper levels of the citadel would be even more dangerous. Granfell looked down on the decorations and statues as meaningless, but continued moving, focusing on the task at hand. As he approached the steps, he smelled a foul odor, and his intuition told him that the center of the citadel was ahead, where the Count himself might be hiding. The silence around indicated that other strong players had not yet reached this area or were held back by traps. Suddenly, Jessica appeared in front of Granfell, lowering herself down from above, her demeanor expressing persistent curiosity about his magical manifestations. She studied the way he used mana without any visible equipment, and the attention seemed feigned insistence. Granfell rudely cut off her intervention and put her on the ground, reminding her of decency and etiquette among training fighters. At that moment, the doors in front swung open and Count Ascura appeared, his appearance accompanied by a noticeable pressure and the activation of a dangerous skill. The Count's skill increased fear in those whose mental level was insufficient, and his presence caused a wave of panic in less resilient players. The pressure from Ascura's appearance was so intense that even experienced fighters felt an internal tremor and slowed down for a moment. Granfell, keeping his composure, took out a necklace called Cursed Blood and prepared to use the exorcism skill. He intended to influence the source of the demonic power, hoping to weaken the Count's influence and create a chance for an attack. The understanding that before them stood a creature many times superior to the capabilities of ordinary players did not stop his intention to complete the assigned quest. Li Ho-yol understood the character's intention to perform an exorcism ritual using a sacrifice to bring Ascura into consciousness and fight him inside his mind. He got the idea, but remained hesitant. It was unclear how to make such a powerful creature feel fear, because the difference in levels exceeded 300 points. The Count treated the plan with mockery and distrust, demonstrating confidence in the superiority of demonic power. Soon, demonic energy descended upon the group. Jessica noticed that the Count was once again gathering the power he had previously given to his servants, and this increased the danger. The return of the given powers could strengthen the enemy. Li Ho-yol realized that restoring this power would be a serious problem, and this became the main source of concern before the ritual. Granfell put on the Cursed Blood necklace, and the space around him began to change under the effect of the item. Suddenly, the room and the surrounding reality became distorted, and everyone found themselves in the vampire's mind. The location was a torn landscape filled with debris and fiery flashes. Inside this space, stones and flashes of fire fell around him. The demon watched and, by the look of it, enjoyed the test. The attack was supposed to break the enemy, but the protagonist survived and found himself on top of a pile of rubble, contrary to expectations of destruction. The Count, puzzled by the man's survival, could not immediately explain what had happened and noticed something amiss in the behavior of his own power. Granfell used a trick of perception. Images and effects appeared around him, creating the appearance of a large dead figure, and this caused confusion in the vampire. The Count's pupils narrowed. He began to doubt the reality of what was happening and found that his influence was weakening. Jessica recorded the changes in the enemy's behavior and watched as the Count retreated in confusion and lost the confidence he had previously gathered. Suddenly, the roof of the castle collapsed, showering everyone with debris. But Granfell's premeditated actions prevented death. Then came the key move. Granfell used the exorcism rite skill, which was capable of inviting a demon into the exorcist's mind without causing physical harm to the one being trapped. This technique effectively released the vampire's essence into Granfell's mind, and control over the situation depended on the mental strength of the performer. The demon attempted to break the barrier and take over his consciousness, but Granfell's mental fortitude maintained control and prevented full possession. The effect exceeded Li Ho-yol's expectations. The demon began to beat in the void, screaming and making chaotic attacks on imaginary opponents, unable to regain its former power. As a result, the Count's power weakened, and a system notification confirmed the completion of the class quest. The ritual condition was fulfilled. Granfell thought the moment was right to finish, but Jessica continued to follow the action and decided to deliver the final blow. She concentrated the magic in the staff and directed the accumulated energy at the weakened body of the vampire. The blow was fatal, and the count fell. After Ascura's fall, information appeared in the log about acknowledging the contribution to the kill, about the accrual of trophies, and an increase in level for participating in the battle. Jessica examined the ashes left by the vampire and picked them up from the floor, tasting them. At this point, some of the players suddenly had some of their game settings disabled, and those present noted a change in the interface and behavior of the environment. Rox was the first to notice the mysterious man who played a key role in the battle and attempted to establish contact with him, offering to exchange names. Granfell briefly considered his manners and willingness to cooperate, then introduced himself by the name he was to use in this event. An ordinary family scene was interrupted unexpectedly when a small child noticed a familiar face on the TV and ran to his mother. The child pointed to the screen and said that he recognized Uncle Ho-Yol there, after which the mother, shocked, walked up to the TV and recognized him. Lee Ho-Yol returned home at this time and continued cleaning, but his attention was distracted by a call from his older sister, number 2. He realized that his time had come after the destruction of the Count, and that his relatives would sooner or later find out about what had happened. The calls from his sister followed one after another, and then a call from a third sister began. He remembered that he had 3 older sisters with whom he had had warm relationships since childhood. He decided not to pick up the phone, expecting grumbling and reproaches, but the sisters still came to his house and insistently demanded to be let in. 3 sisters, Lee Eun-hai, Lee Ji-yoon, and Lee Ye-lim, entered the apartment and took over, causing inconvenience to the neighbors. Lee Ho-Yol asked them to calm down and made it clear that he was surprised by their behavior. Meanwhile, on TV, news was broadcast about a star player who appeared like a comet and recently destroyed the Count, acting together with the famous player Jessica. It was reported that the Berserk Guild was working with him, and the entire gaming world was interested in this fact. At that moment, Nam Tai-min brought tea to his older brother and asked him to drink it. But Nam Cheol looked upset due to the widespread discussion about Lee Ho-Yol's name. Nam Chul felt that this was a real failure for their plans and that they had lost their chance despite having contact and a reason to talk. Nam Tai-min insisted that there was still a chance and suggested using the connection and calling Lee Ho-Yol to establish contact and propose cooperation. The idea was that thanks to Lee Ho-Yol's actions, their guild had gained visibility and a chance to offer solid terms, and it was better to act immediately. Nam Chul agreed with the move and called Lee Ho-Yol in hopes of establishing contact. At this time, the protagonist played with his niece and recalled that about 10 years ago, he came up with the name Granfell and dreamed of dyeing his hair ash-colored and greeting people like nobles. His niece and sisters discussed whether what he was doing was dangerous and reminded him that players often got injured during raids. The parents did not yet know what had happened because they had left early in the morning, and the sisters assumed that upon hearing the news, the parents would be frightened. The sisters expressed their willingness to support him and suggested that he call them at least occasionally and save his savings. Lee Ho-Yol was surprised by the request for savings and thought about the reward for clearing the rift as a source of income for players in Arcana, calculated according to the rift level. He knew that the development company had gone bankrupt and that the director was paying out of his own pocket, so the amount could be significant. Lee Ho-Yol tried to withdraw money and was surprised to see a transfer of 110 billion won for mind clearing in his account. He was stunned by the size of the reward, as he had been counting primarily on trophies and did not expect such a large payment. At the same time, in the Shining Branch in South Korea, Camilla was talking to Jessica and asking if she knew that she and Lee Ho-yeol allegedly destroyed the Count. Jessica replied that she didn't know, and Camilla insisted on telling the story, asking her to stop watching strange videos on YouTube. Jessica angrily demanded silence to concentrate and advised Camilla not to disturb, after which Camilla walked away. Lee Ho-yeol saw the huge sum of money coming in from the logs and bank notifications and felt a mixture of surprise and awkwardness. Granfell noticed that Lee Ho-yeol was happy because of the money and considered it unworthy, maintaining his attitude towards what was happening. After defeating Count Lee, Ho-yeol received a trophy, the Vampire Orb, a unique item with a curse. The sphere was marked as a cursed artifact, and in Chapter 12, he would have reacted to it in a special way. But now, during the battle with the Count, he chose the Cursed Blood necklace. He thought that the necklace would disappear after the battle, but the item remained with him, and the curse was completely lifted. Apparently, the exorcism ritual acted as a cleansing, and this effect was felt on the necklace and the sphere. In addition to the items, a large sum of 110 billion won was deposited into the account, and this payment seemed incredible. At night, the main character could not fall asleep because his thoughts did not give him peace. He knew it would be wise to buy equipment to protect the rifts, but he was unsure whether it was worth spending money on things that were appropriate for his level. A few days ago, his level was 55, and now it has risen sharply. Taking into account the cost of suitable equipment, the prices are very high. There were currently no items with the required magical power ratings available for sale. Meanwhile, a conference was taking place in the Korean branch, and the manager asked to watch the screen carefully. The broadcast showed the rubble turning into stone pillars, which strongly suggested the use of spells. Some participants argued, stating that it was impossible to create such huge stone structures with magic and that there was a limit to magical power. The discussion escalated into an argument between employees, and one employee noted fatigue from the constant questions and gossip. There was no record of a person named Lee Ho-yeol in the Arcana database, which raised doubts about whether it was his real name or a nickname. Sunbae decided that the situation should become clearer with the update and suggested waiting for the official release. When the update came out, a new location actually appeared, Yusra Island, which was referred to as Treasure Island during the game's era. On this island, according to legend, precious stones grew that had no analogs in the real world, and now the island has appeared in reality. The news immediately announced that with the appearance of the island, a regular conference of magicians would be held, where the development of magical skills would be discussed. The organizers emphasized that this was the first conference of its kind since the appearance of Arcana in the real world, and the event attracted wide public interest. Among those invited was the player Jessica, who occupies 4th place in the ranking. Rumors linked her arrival to the island and the defense of the tower, together with Lee Ho-yeol. Jessica refused to give interviews despite media attention. Lee Ho-yeol watched the broadcast and was surprised that Jessica was actually 4th and arrived first at the venue. He felt awkward. He tried to behave politely, and the feeling of embarrassment increased at the thought of her rank and presence. Granfell recalled a phrase from the old days that it was not just technology that was important for the tower, but magic, and this sounded like a reminder of Arcana's past. Having decided to go to the Tower of Magicians, he first obeyed the character's strange demand to wash the dishes and only then set off on his way. A large number of fighters had gathered at the Tower of the Mages, and the atmosphere was tense with anticipation of reports and demonstrations. Claire, an experienced tower mage, greeted the arrivals and noted that the resumption of conferences was of interest, and the first report was to be presented by Mr. Marcella. One of the magicians approached the wall first and discovered a magical barrier in front of him, an illusion created by the owner of the tower. Passing through this wall required an invitation, and Jessica, who had a pass, calmly passed through the barrier. Claire recognized Jessica and was inspired. Jessica was given the task of accompanying the hunters to the Crystal Hall and was supposed to be the last of the invited to enter. Lee Ho-yeol found himself in the tower, and the crowd immediately recognized him as the hero of the news. People immediately approached him, trying to talk to him and take photos. One of the fans grabbed him and asked for a photo, but the fan's persistence irritated him, and the protagonist ordered him to stop pestering him. The scene showed that the character's rudeness attracts attention and can increase the audience's interest, which is something Lee Ho-yeol wanted to avoid. While looking for shelter, he noticed an unusual wall and walked through it. The transparent barrier turned out to be an illusion, and he found himself inside, where strong magic stretched the space. Claire noted the power of the illusion and praised the demonstration of magic, admitting that the technique was worthy of attention. He walked through the wall where he met Claire, scaring her greatly. Claire still didn't understand who he was, because all the hunters with invitations had already arrived, and Lee Ho-yeol was clearly someone else. She started checking the lists, but no matter how much she looked, there were no new hunters on the invitation list, which surprised her greatly. Lee Ho-yeol asked if there was a problem, and Claire replied with concern that there was not a problem at all, since he said that he wanted to attend the conference, but he didn't have an invitation. Claire was alarmed, because only the tower's owner could use illusion magic of this level, and it was impossible to pass through it without a ticket. She explained that according to the rules, a person without an invitation can only take part in the conference if he passes through the magical wall, and up to this point, no one had succeeded in doing this. Whether she should admire him or be surprised, she still couldn't figure out how he did it. Lee Ho-yeol was truly amazed that he was able to personally touch this magic, and wondered if he would be able to create a similar space in the future when he reached the level of 1,000 magic. He roughly understood the principle and realized that all that remained was to add magical power. They took the elevator up and arrived at a place where they were greeted by an incredible view. A crystal hall opened up before them, a place of sublime knowledge. When Arcana became a reality, its inhabitants, who were previously NPCs, were also transported to this world. Among them was a man of great influence, Marcello, the youngest magician, who was called the future of the Tower of Magicians. He was a genius and was the first to understand the situation the world was in, using all his knowledge to organize scientific conferences where new achievements in magic were discussed. Jessica's hat explained all this to her, but she only responded that it sounded boring, which angered the hat, who heard Marcello being disparaged. Marcello came out to the magicians and said that his only skill was magic, and he did not understand any other interference in its nature. To be in such a majestic place of knowledge is the highest honor for a magician. He noted that the magic tower was not summoned to the world of hunters by chance, and along with it, Arcana's worldview also penetrated into reality. Phenomena called renewals can still be encountered, and their magic remains as alien as the science that tries to explain it. He stressed the need to unite efforts to uncover the cause and return to the former world without unnecessary conflicts. The theme of the conference was the development of magic through science. Marcello created a fire seal in his hand and demonstrated a new method he called fusion, a harmonious combination of magic and science that produced a new flair. However, he warned that it was unclear what the merger of two such different spheres would lead to. Jessica's boredom turned to interest. Marcello said that he would need the help of hunters to continue his research, and this seemed like an announcement of a new quest. Lee Ho-yeol raised his hand and stated that there was a flaw in the study presented. Those present gasped at the fact that he dared to address Marcello in such a way. He asked if he could hear the reason. Lee Ho-yeol explained that magic and science were different fields, and their fusion caused a difference that resulted in a waste of time. He said that he had already experienced the difference between skill and magic and created a similar seal showing his powers. Marcello was shocked. It took him months to activate it, but Lee Ho-yol repeated it in an instant. To give the hunters the same feeling, he demonstrated that it was indeed the same flash. Lee Ho-yol explained that he used centrifugal force during the interaction, and although the technique looked clumsy, the effect was strong. He noted that he had previously spent too much magical power, but now his efficiency had increased, and it was not in vain that he had come to the conference. Marcello approached him with an offer to participate in research, giving him the quest research. Lee Ho-yol was surprised that his words and demonstration led to such a result. Meanwhile, the girl from the Berserker Guild was happy that they finally found themselves on the island. She asked Leonie if it reminded her of Arcanum, remembering the time when they were waiting for new adventures. There were many people around from different guilds, the Lionheart Order, the Shadow Mercenaries, and the Hunters Union. The pink-haired girl recalled that the island in Arcana was known as Treasure Island, and most likely everyone came for it, not knowing about the rift. Unexpectedly, Claire called Leon and asked if the conference was over. When she heard how Lee Ho-yol had acted, she was surprised and laughed, assuming that he had been attacked, but it turned out to be the opposite. Marcello acknowledged his remark, bowed his head, and even offered a quest. Everyone was talking about it because he left the conference with a new assignment. While talking with Marcello, Lee Ho-yol heard that if he had the necessary substances for the research, he could write them down, and Marcello would try to get them. Lee Ho-yol just smirked and said that if he was the one who suggested it, then he should get everything right now. The Tower of Mages towered in the sky, and on its top floor gathered the most powerful sorcerers, who were called the 5 Stars. Among them was Yuna, the morning star of the tower, and it was he who approached Marcello. Yuna reminded that the tower does not interfere in the affairs of hunters, but Marcello broke this rule by offering one of them cooperation. Everyone waited for an explanation. Marcello calmly replied that Hunter Lee Ho-yol understood the basics of magic, was able to see the difference in its manifestations, and it was his powers that could help in the current world situation. He understands the consequences of his decision and takes responsibility. The senior magicians reluctantly acknowledged his right to do so and closed the conversation. As he left the room, Marcello muttered irritably that the old people were stuck in an illusion and were afraid to acknowledge reality. At that moment, Claire ran up to him with a heavy box. She hurried to Lee Ho-yol to bring him the things he asked for. Marcello offered to help and said that he wanted to talk to him too. Lee Ho-yol was sitting in the library and reading when Marcello entered and laid out rare items on the table: frozen knowledge, the essence of the sun, forbidden books, and magical tools for restoring strength. He asked if the hunter was pleased, but Granfell coldly remarked that these things were not up to his level. As proof, he showed a level 600 artifact, although he himself remained at level 134. Marcello was confused, admitted his mistake, and apologized. Then Lee Ho-yol demanded something truly useful. Marcello handed him a rare hexagonal brooch, limited to level 100. She restored 10% of her magic power every time she cast a spell. The limit was suitable, and Lee Ho-yol agreed to take her. The brooch looked simple, but Marcello insisted that it was special and was glad that the hunter agreed to work together. Lee Ho-yol himself doubted that there was anything outstanding about the item, but decided that it was useful. While they were discussing this, on the island, a streamer was broadcasting live in front of the portal and waiting for Lee Ho-yol to appear. A crowd of players gathered around, everyone believing that he would appear at the very last moment. But suddenly, a man approached the streamer, whom they immediately recognized. It was Kinber, a cruel player about whom many terrible rumors were circulating. He grabbed the camera and said that Lee Ho-yol was in everyone's sight too often, and sooner or later, everyone would get tired of him. Kinber promised to keep an eye on him and sent a warning via stream. Viewers in the chat began to discuss that Lee Ho-yol was scared and would not show up on the island, but loyal fans were indignant and assured that he always arrives on time. At that time, Lee Ho-yeol himself was wondering whether it was worth going there. He knew that the island was considered Treasure Island, but the gap there was level 350 and he was only level 134. Getting there threatened death. At that moment, a new quest came to him. The Stir class demanded the hunt for the last evil and ordered to illuminate a world plunged into darkness. The quest stated that the island hid a great evil associated with the 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, anger, gluttony, lust, laziness, and greed. Lee Ho-yeol remembered how he had defeated the Count with difficulty and by chance, and he knew that meeting such a force would be even more dangerous. Granfell calmly noted that the tower's master had said earlier that there was no point in going there, but if there really was evil lurking on the island, it must be destroyed. Lee Ho-yeol agreed and without hesitation declared that he was leaving right away. Before leaving, he carelessly folded dozens of green tea bags into his jacket, preparing for a new challenge. The streamer, standing at the portal, waited for the idol to appear and exclaimed with joy, because he believed that he would come after all. Granfell first stepped onto the island and immediately felt a strong, malevolent presence here. The skill Predator Connection was activated automatically. This anger was different from the usual demonic rage. It was thick and oppressive, as if the very bottom of the island was saturated with evil. Granfell noted that if the entire island was truly saturated with such anger, then the skill Predator Connection would be useful in this situation. He noticed a dark tension falling on the ground and said that the sight of anger seemingly flowing right underfoot was ominous. The streamer wasted no time and began filming Granfell from the bushes, trying to catch his every step on camera. Granfell felt a rustling sound and turned around. The leaves stirred, but he kept walking until a slight uneasiness began to form inside him. The character was looking for more suitable prey. He preferred to choose opponents by strength and not get involved in risky fights. The streamer quietly promised viewers not to disturb them and said that they could leave the broadcast if they wanted, but he still continued to communicate with subscribers. Suddenly, a scream was heard. The streamer turned around and saw a battle scene where the squad was in trouble with a level 420 Emerald Tiger. The hunters lost their formation and split up. One archer couldn't hit the beast because of the glare, and the situation became critical. Realizing the threat, one of the rescued noticed Granfell nearby and realized that the star had come to the rescue. Lee Ho-yeol felt afraid, but Granfell remained firm and confident, and this behavior shocked the observers. The Emerald Tiger was the most powerful beast on the island. Level 420 was only 10 points below the Count, and running away was not an option. Granfell assessed the battle conditions. The bright sun and glare were a hindrance, but if the beast was immobilized, its skills would be weakened. He used the ignition skill and channeled mana to create fiery ulcers, the fire quickly engulfing the undergrowth. The streamer and viewers couldn't believe it. The forest flashes looked like a real fire, but the fire froze the tiger's movement. In the midst of the battle, Lee Ho-yeol received a notification acknowledging his contribution to the destruction of the Emerald Tiger, which resulted in a level up. Marcello's mana recovery item also helped. The 10% recovery made his actions more durable in battle. The team leader couldn't believe that one person had destroyed a level 420 beast with one decisive blow. At this time, events of their own were taking place on the island. Shreg, the master of the Second Sun Guild, was angry that their squad had not yet taken control of the center. They had expected an easy cleanup, but the monsters proved stronger, and now the idea of joining forces with other groups was being discussed. Shreg received word that the route to the west was closed after Lee Ho-yeol intervened, helping to clear the passage and causing the area to catch fire. The master thought that this unknown player could become a key figure and ordered analysts to check all data about him. The inspection revealed that Lee Ho-yeol had received a pure emerald, a top-class material prized for its quality and rarity, and this trophy confirmed his contribution. The protagonist was delighted. The emerald could be used to create unique items in research, and its value was obvious. Suddenly, Lee Ho-yol felt a strange change in the air. Demonic energy hung in the air and caused a slight tremor, as if something had awakened inside. A new notification appeared in the class window. The quest required finding out what great evil was hiding on the island. The earth began to tremble, and a warning came that the island was absorbing the greed of people. A process that could lead to destruction had begun. All the guilds and mages on the island received this message and realized with horror that the island was a rift hiding a dangerous power. Lee Ho-yol just chuckled to himself, thinking that it might have something to do with his actions. But the choice to act now belonged to everyone. The great evil of the island manifested itself in flashes of fire, and from these signs it became clear that the source was the demon of greed. The demon hunters remembered Akshan and assumed that he might know something about the nature of the disaster. Everyone understood that if the process was filled, the great evil would awaken. The protagonist decided not to destroy but to prevent the awakening. He realized a new problem. Rumors about the treasure found meant that the count had started, and there were still 9 islands left. Other guilds rushed for the treasures and hurried, realizing that delay would result in the loss of loot. He looked around and noticed another guild hoping to snag at least one treasure before the destruction counter moved any further. At this point, all the players thought the same. To prevent greed from reaching the treasures, you need to let go of your own desires, but it was impossible to convince everyone. Lee Ho-yol started biting his nails, not knowing what to do. Granfell said that he saw one way out and that he would take all the treasures for himself. On the second island, the Shining Guild defeated the main monsters and took the treasures. Immediately after that, the destruction process advanced and one cell on the scale was filled. Jackson noticed that Usura consisted of 10 islands, and one cell was already painted over. The appearance of the treasure started the countdown. Rox confirmed the observation and added that he heard Jessica's report that Lee Ho-yol had received a quest from the tower and had climbed to the top floor, which completed the picture. Some speculated about a connection between Jessica and Lee Ho-yol, a discussion that irritated Jackson, who ordered Camilla to be more serious. Rox noted Lee Ho-yol's rapid rise and expressed concern that such a rise could become a threat. Jacob agreed that it was risky to act against such a player without preparation. While they were discussing, another destruction cell filled up. A notification came that the United Heavens Guild had found a treasure. Many activated their powers and hurried on. Rox realized that if they remained motionless, they risked being left with nothing, and they needed to move too. Lee Ho-yol watched Granfell and realized in horror that he really intended to take all the treasures for himself. Lee Ho-yol tried to stop Granfell, but he didn't understand how to keep the character under control, and if the cells were filled, the great evil would awaken. A guild with a flag and armor with a lion's head appeared in front. It was the Order of the Lionheart. Lee Ho-yol did not expect to meet such forces here and recognized from the signs that these were veterans from the time of Arcana. The Order's commander introduced himself as Harkon Kingsguard, and one of the knights approached the leader, demanding that he show respect to the commander. Harkon Kingsguard asked the adventurer's name, and the protagonist gave his name, which interested the commander. The commander felt that this seeker was different from the newcomers. He noticed a hexagonal brooch on his clothes and was surprised. It was a sign of a rare artifact. At that moment, an explosion occurred to the side. The argument about the presentation was interrupted. One of the fighters asked if everything was okay. The commander pointed to a creature that looked like a large turtle that suddenly appeared in front of them. The fighters took up positions and began to fight back. The enemy turned out to be very strong, and when the commander was already fighting back at the limit of his strength, the main character appeared and summoned a stone, which crushed the enemy and restrained his movement. All the knights were surprised who this man was who could create a wall with one effort and use it in battle without preparation. The protagonist understood that everything was bad because he had strengthened the protective walls to the maximum and spent too much magical energy. Without the brooch, he could collapse without strength. He realized the need to conserve mana and continued to act to give the Order time to regroup. Harkon Kingsguard thanked him for his help and promised that the Order would not forget his kindness and would be grateful for his support in the battle. Lee Ho-Yol explained that the monster must be fought accordingly and said that if the Order needed help, he was ready to provide it. The streamer waited for his idol and filmed the broadcast. He was delighted, but the turtle was still alive. The commander shouted to the knights of the Order of the Lionheart to finish off the monster, and the knights pounced on it from all sides. The protagonist calmly watched them fight, assessing their tactics and strength. One of the fighters noticed his strange behavior and thanked him for saving him. The commander swore an oath on his heart. For them, this oath was sacred, but for him, it sounded empty. The knights continued to fight back, and Lee Ho-Yol thought about the Order. He realized that these knights were not as strong as he expected. They looked unprepared for serious battles. The Lionheart Order didn't look weak by name, but their close combat tactics didn't give them an advantage. The reserve troops stood behind and waited for their turn, which gave rise to the thought of how long it would take to finally destroy the enemy. Lee Ho-Yol checked the destruction progress bar and found that it was already half full. The thought of how quickly things were going to progress scared him. He realized that at this rate, the evil would reach the rest of the islands, and that if he could create a spatial road for attack, everything would be much easier. The fighters on fire made their way through the flames, trying to finish off the monster, but they needed help. He remembered the space he saw in the magic tower and decided to take action to open the way for the offensive. He called to Harkon Kingsguard and asked if the Order was ready to attack, because now he would open the passage. Concentrating his strength in his hand, he began to build slabs along which one could reach the large turtle. The fighters immediately recognized similar passages from the magic tower. One of the fighters stated that an ordinary hunter was not capable of such magic and wondered who this man really was. After that, Lee Ho-Yol had almost no mana left, but the way was already open, and the commander rushed forward, not missing the chance to quickly end the battle. The commander attacked the monster with fury and cut it in half. At this moment, a notification came that the contribution to the destruction of the giant turtle was automatically recognized, and the protagonist leveled up several times. Harkon Kingsguard approached him and pointed to the brooch he was wearing. The brooch turned out to be a rare gift that the Emperor had given to the tower in the distant past. The knights knelt and swore that the Order of the Lionheart would remain grateful for the rescue and would never forget his kindness. The giant turtle was destroyed thanks to his contribution, and a large blue sphere that absorbed magic appeared near him. This was the island's treasure. Lee Ho-Yol didn't know what to do. If he took the sphere, the great evil would awaken. But if he left it, someone else would pick up the treasure and the awakening would happen anyway. Granfell said that it was necessary to decide quickly, and without asking anyone, he took the treasure and took it for himself. Lee Ho-Yol was dissatisfied with Granfell's actions and thought about the consequences. The awakening of the great evil meant the end for everyone. For Granfell, wealth was fleeting. As the heir to a great family, he knew no greed and was not afraid of temptation. He explained that the way to prevent the treasure from being swallowed up by greed was simple. One had to take all the treasures himself, and he actually managed to do it. Meanwhile, Kinber watched Lee Ho-Yol and waited for him to collect the remaining treasures. Behind him lay the dead team members and one wounded man he had saved earlier. The wounded man remained alive, but he was angry at the killer and was not going to let what happened just go. Kinber acted decisively and killed the man. His karma increased, and this made it easier to take the things from the victim. In a short time, he collected 32 trophies in addition to the emerald. The amount of loot grew. Everyone tried to cope with the consequences of the character's choice. The streamer continued filming the fight. The scene was remembered for a long time, and in his hands was a broken crown of epic rank. Lee Ho-yeol grimaced and couldn't believe that this was the very treasure he received. He winced, wondering if this was a joke, because he had hoped that greed would disappear. But not all treasures were created equal. The Order of the Lionheart joined their squad. No one could understand what this strange new team was. Harkon Kingsguard asked if they had been told to come with him, and remembering the oath, Lee Ho-yeol realized that there was another meaning behind the words. He thought that the knights had promised not to attack him when they met. But the commander explained otherwise. The order had sworn to be his sword and shield on Yusra. Lee Ho-yeol found it hard to believe that an order of such rank would follow him. It seemed unbelievable. The difference in levels was huge. He was level 166. The order had an average of 600, and this made their alliance an ideal solution for monsters of level 400 and above. They decided to urgently cross to the next island together. Cyber continued to watch and reported that Lee Ho-yeol had found the treasure and the Lionheart Order had joined him. Cyber was inspired and admitted that he had prepared a trap. Once they boarded the boat, a deadly poison would spread throughout the boat. First he would kill Lee Ho-yeol, then he would check the treasure. While he was thinking, it seemed to him that some hand grabbed him by the throat. He felt as if his throat had been cut. However, it turned out to be just a vision. He did not understand how they could notice him at such a distance. An evil face appeared in front of him, and right there was a strange squirrel sitting on a branch right in front of him. Harkon Kingsguard explained that he had been watching Cyber all this time with the help of that very squirrel. Some people had their own methods of spying. Cyber turned out to have low psychological stability. He was found to have strong fear. This explained his strange reaction. Harkon didn't understand why he was so scared of the little squirrel. Lee Ho-yeol continued to watch the process. The island was gradually being consumed by greed. The destruction scale was already filled with 8 cells out of 10. With the crown found, there was only one treasure left, and the situation became critical. Cyber still couldn't figure out what was happening. Someone was trying to call him on the connection, but he couldn't answer because he was tied to a tree and in a panic. He didn't understand where he was or if he was alive. The thought that Lee Ho-yeol felt sorry for him seemed humiliating. Cyber was paralyzed with fear and agreed to wash away the guilt, promising not to bother anyone again. He called his boss and said that he was no longer going to carry out the mission. In a fit of rage, the boss smashed the phone. Everything in his head got mixed up and became unbearable. He complained that the only thing that could help was money, and admitted that he had taken out private loans. The thought of paying for the murder driving him crazy. Lee Ho-yeol felt a strange sensation in the sky. The usual notification was felt deeper. The hunter's intuition told him that the great evil was nearby. The demon was close, and the gang leader's body began to shake from anger. He could barely contain himself. The crowd tried to calm him down, but he suddenly attacked the gang and, in a fit of rage, stabbed several with a knife. The gang members knew about his passion for money, but did not understand the extent to which he had gone crazy. The gang leader's name was Park Hyun-jun, and at that moment a notification came that Lee Ho-yeol had killed another player, for which he was awarded a golden fruit and another 62 trophies. The streamer who filmed this was sitting behind a rock, trembling with fear and unable to do anything. Park Hyun-jun exclaimed that he was now satisfied and believed that he had only gotten justice for the murders. At this point, the streamer panicked and shouted that the rumors about Cyber killing people in the rifts were true, and started running away from the crowd. He hurried away from the camera and those present, and in the confusion, he stumbled. One of the hunters from the Pathfinder League managed to catch him and stop him, checked his condition, and suggested that he sit out in a safe place. The streamer thanked the savior and calmed down for a moment, realizing that the threat had been survived. The news continued the story about Yusra Island. The report explained that the archipelago is divided into 10 islands, each with a unique treasure hidden on it, and the search methods vary. Guilds use different approaches. Some hunt the owners of the islands, others look for monsters with names, others collect fragments, and several associations have already found their treasures. The Shining Guild had just arrived on one of the islands and was filming the process with a drone. Camilla noted that the guild master was acting too cocky for the sake of prestige. Namtai Min believed that there was no need to jump over one's head. It was important to accumulate contributions and earn points. The Inazuma and Gaon guilds still had a chance to find treasure. Hisagi Kazuma expressed irritation at Gaon's pathos, but his fighter reminded him that the fight was not over yet, and everyone still had a chance. Several guilds gathered again at the portal to find out who would be the first to reach the last island, and at that moment, the cameras recorded an unexpected event. The Lionheart Order appeared on the field. Reports indicated that they had a high-ranking leader, Harkon Kingsguard, who was around level 600 on their side. The report noted that an unusual candidate was at the head of the squad, and attention suddenly switched to Lee Ho Yol, whom many recognized from recent events. The rankers and those present immediately noticed his calm appearance. It became clear that he was the one who could find the last treasure. Lee Ho Yol felt awkward due to the stares and whispers of the fighters who decided not to confront him at first. Camilla stated that she would not fight him unless absolutely necessary. She had one life, and the protagonist resigned himself to the attention of the crowd. When everyone was thinking about tactics, the earth suddenly began to tremble, and sparkling began to appear below, as if lava was breaking through from under the crust. The players hurried to change their gear to firefighting gear, block the passages, and prepare for the fiery test. A red-hot mass began to burst out of the cracks. From the lava suddenly appeared the owner of the island, an unusual powerful creature in the form of a giant carp, surrounded by boiling lava and marked level 420. The flames and lava flow created an insurmountable barrier. It was not possible to approach the monster. The first decisions were cautious and aimed at observation. Namtai Min was in a hurry to show heroism and took a step forward, but Nam Cheol advised him not to take risks without a plan and reminded him of the importance of calculation. The drone continued filming. The rankers could not reach the monster due to the lava lake surrounding it. Harkon came closer and clarified the condition of the protagonist, but said that he personally could not approach the monster because of the heat and rivers of lava. Lee Ho Yol remained calm and made it clear that he did not bring people here without a plan. Gathering mana, he began to build an energy flow around himself. The observers could not understand what technique he would use and decided to wait to see how the experiment would end. He used the usual pattern of magic, dividing the process into 3 stages, collecting mana, interfering with the natural element, and manifesting the final effect. For him, lava was not inviolable. It consisted of molten rock and energy, and he directed the flow into the mass itself to change its state. Under the influence of his manipulation, the lava began to disintegrate into large fragments. The stones began to fall as if cooling down and losing connection with the original element. The monster was left without its usual environment and found itself on a dry surface, deprived of lava support and not nearly as invincible as it had seemed before. The situation changed dramatically. The enemy lost its advantage and became vulnerable to attack. Everyone gasped when they saw that the plan had worked, and Lee Ho Yol immediately gave the command to Harkon and his allies to strike the monster while it was vulnerable. The lava around the battle site rose up and froze in the air. The sight seemed incredible. The path to the island's master opened, and Harkon decided to contribute to the battle. Rox was furious at the missed opportunity. He was distracted and lost the chance to be the first to attack. Nam Chul explained to Nam Tae Min that there was almost no chance of getting a share when Harkon took the initiative. The right to strike first belongs to the one who broke through to the monster. Harkon rushed towards the fish, but it suddenly shot up, and no one understood how it managed to jump so high. The fish began to jump up and down. The approach became even more difficult. The fight could drag on for a long time. Suddenly, dozens of sharp stones pierced the fish's body, piercing the skin and burning the flesh from the inside. Schrag reported that it was a state transition. He cooled the lava and turned part of it into stone-like ice, then formed spears from the mass. Such a major change seemed incredible. The system was supposed to limit such manipulation of mana. Granfell merely told Harkol to act, and he dove forward, cut the fish with his sword, and cut off its head. The system message confirmed the victory over the great lava koi, and the participants received notifications about the end of the battle. Rox grabbed his head in shame. The Shining One's contribution was 0, and this hit their reputation. News feeds spread information about the victory and emphasized that Lee Ho-Yol and the Lionheart Order were among the main ones. Journalists were surprised by the ease with which Lee Ho-Yol dealt with the boss, which caused widespread discussion. Lee Ho-Yol himself felt an acute shortage of mana and understood that his strength was at its limit, but the audience could not see this. Suddenly, a sphere appeared in front of him. It turned out to be the island's treasure. The system confirmed that treasure had already been found on another island, and this made him reach for the item with caution. When he took the sphere in his hand, the process of destruction did not begin, and this caused confusion because it was assumed otherwise. Demonic energy began to build up around, and the island seemed to be saturated with the power of greed. At first, we thought that there was a mistake in the calculation, but it turned out that another sphere had appeared. Lee Ho-Yol was dumbfounded because one treasure did not cause any effects, and because greed did not touch him when he took it. At that moment, the picture moved to the leader of the gang who had previously killed people and whose gang attacked the streamer. The people who saved the streamer recognized him as a scoundrel and decided to stay away from him. Now everything has taken a new turn. The leader of the bandits found a treasure sphere in himself and did not understand what was happening to him. Then the demon grabbed his head and began to influence his mind. Greed spoke to him and convinced him that he really wanted it, despite his words of denial. Due to low mental resistance, the bandit was unable to resist and fell under the influence of demonic power. Just when greed was about to consume him and he was about to gain power, a knight from the order flew in and pierced the bandit with a sword. The knight checked the streamer's condition and made sure that everything was okay with him. Lee Ho-Yol was nearby and insisted on safety. The streamer was incredibly happy about being saved and exclaimed with delight. A lot was at stake on his loss. Despite the serious blow, the bandit remained alive, and the knight asked Lee Ho-Yol to give orders for further action. At that moment, the system issued a notification about the creation of a class quest, and deadly red energy gushed out from the bandit's body. The appearance of demonic power confirmed that the treasures had been corrupted by greed, and the ancient corruption had begun to activate. The task of the class quest became obvious. It required preventing the revival of greed and preventing the treasures from being touched by demonic power. The destruction had begun, and the threat had become immediate. The salvation of the island and the safety of all present depended on it. The demonic energy compressed itself into its hands and rushed to grab the island, gluing the parts into one mass, and something resembling a golden castle appeared in the center. The glitter spread across the surface, and everyone realized that this was no ordinary treasure. Before them stood the Palace of Greed, a place where unbridled greed gathers power around the throne. There was an ominous aura around the palace, and one did not want to approach it. The feeling of threat was growing. At this point, a notification came about the suspension of the class quest, and this caused confusion since the task was considered uncompleted. Harkon noticed that a new danger was approaching them and ordered them to prepare, watch their steps carefully, and keep in formation. Undead creatures crawled out of the ground, and corpse hands slid across the bark. First a golden castle appeared, and now an army of the dead was emerging. The situation became more complicated. The original goal was replaced by the need to hold back the horde of undead. The class list explained the sequence of actions. First, prevent greed from touching the treasures. Then suppress the army of the undead. And finally, destroy the embodiment of greed. The requirement seemed too much for the hero with his resources. The task was designed for high-level players. Hakan ordered the knights to hold their formation and retreat slowly so that they would not crumble under the onslaught of the undead. At the same time, he assessed the people's readiness to fulfill the oath to become a sword for an ally and confirmed the squad's determination. He gave the order to cover the path so that Lee Ho-yol could reach the center where the main clash was expected. Other guilds and streamers watched the events and recorded that a wave of undead with hundreds of creatures was coming from the palace. Large teams joined the campaign. Not everyone understood the scale of the threat. Lee Ho-yol gave the command to attack. Dozens of knights rushed forward, trying to break through to the palace gates and seize the initiative. The people of Arcana's management asked to increase the broadcast. Security experts discussed isolating the island and cutting it off from outside networks to prevent the spread of corrupt magic. This decision could have prevented the infection. The orders fought better than analysts expected. Lionheart showed coherence and strength in repelling the attacks of the undead. The restoration of mana in the fighters went relatively smoothly thanks to the artifacts. Shrig warned his subordinates that moving forward now would be suicide. Intervention without a plan would lead to losses. He urged them to keep common sense and not rush into a mad attack. But after the first victories, many guilds felt a surge of confidence. They began to use restoration magic, hoping to quickly regain their strength and join the assault. For Lee Ho-yol, the situation remained critical due to the severe shortage of mana. He estimated that he did not have enough resources to suppress the army of the undead and simultaneously deal with the embodiment of greed. The plan was too ambitious for a single person. Unexpectedly, the Gaon and Berserker guilds followed the leader's example and entered the Golden Palace, which provoked an even more intense clash. Now the maximum number of fighters and opponents was gathering inside. Gaon and Berserker suddenly joined the raid on the palace, and it looked familiar from previous raids. Lee Ho-yol was glad that the allies came, but Granfell was cold and rude, stating that help was necessary. Rin came because they still had a debt to those who helped them out, and she didn't like the rudeness. Nam Chul told his younger brother that this was a chance to impress Lee Ho-yol, and Nam Tai Min tried to be bolder. Lee Ho-yol felt doubt because his partners looked stern and unkind. Hakan ordered the undead to prepare and began to rise from the ground again and attack the formation. He ordered the priests to cast blessings as quickly as possible because only divine power could help destroy the horde. Ren and the other guilds froze as they saw the Guan priests come to support the fight. God's blessing joined the warriors, and their combat capabilities against the undead increased dramatically. Ren was surprised that they managed to get to the place first and apply protection in time, which gave them an advantage. The knights felt that with the blessing, fighting became completely different, and Lee Ho-yol remembered this intervention. Nam Tai Min laughed and raised questions about the buffs needed for combat, but Granfell rudely rejected the idea of faith and looked down on the interference. His words disappointed Hakan, who had expected seriousness and respect for the vow to become a sword for the common cause. At that moment, demonic energy began to concentrate around the palace gates and break through cracks in reality. Hakan remembered the old days when he had sworn to serve in the name of a higher cause, and the memory of the thousands who had died strengthened his resolve. He remembered the stories of the appearance of the leader of the demon army and how 1,000 soldiers fell under the onslaught of darkness. These memories prompted Hakan to declare that the demons had blocked the path to those who should provide salvation, and that only defeating the leader would open the way to an answer. The commander noticed that his faith was shaken, but Harkon renounced his doubts and called the knights to attack for the sake of duty and oath. He led the people into an attack, but at a critical moment, the demons surrounded him with blue energy and began to distort space. Harkon felt himself losing his footing and suddenly found himself in the ordinary world among those watching the broadcast. The knights around him also found themselves outside the battlefield, and the spectators watched in bewilderment as the warrior appeared in their reality. Harkon did not understand where he was, but soon he saw the silhouette of a majestic figure who explained that she had been captured in the form of a demon and was looking for a way to return. The figure apologized for its slowness and asked Harkon to become its sword, promising to support the return of order. Harkon, shocked, confirmed his readiness to fulfill his oath and go to meet the enemy in order to clear the path to salvation. Lee Ho-yol couldn't believe that Harkon had made such a decision, but he began to approach the place where the demon stood, preparing to support the attack. The knights were confused and did not understand why their commander had changed so abruptly. Lee Ho-yol quickly realized that Harkon was under demonic control. A strong mental debuff similar to possession was felt. Suddenly, Harkon found himself behind the main character, and Lee Ho-yol felt the sword rushing towards his throat. At the most critical moment, Nam-Tae-min managed to stand next to him and stop the blade, blocking the weapon's path. Nam-Tae-min held her position firmly, and thanks to her intervention, the protagonist's life was saved. She was still recovering her mana and could barely act, but her action saved the situation. If it weren't for Nam-Tae-min's timely help, Lee Ho-yol would have died that second while trying to figure out who was controlling Harkon. Harkon was fighting with his own fighter at that moment. His subordinates asked him to come to his senses and return to unity. Harkon himself branded his people demons and called them by foreign names that they did not know. The commander shouted that he did not want to listen and intended to launch a frontal attack on his own comrades. The energy around him sparkled strangely, and he began to concentrate a powerful force before dashing. The situation itself became chaotic, and the knights tried to restrain their comrade and at the same time fight off the undead. Lee Ho-yol assessed the situation and looked for a way to neutralize the control over Harkon and protect his allies. The tension was growing, and the outcome of the battle depended on whether they could snatch Harkon from the clutches of the demon. Those standing nearby noticed that his blows were knocking out the soil and creating shock waves. One wave lifted up stones and swept most of them off their feet. When the dust settled, everyone saw that the stone block had collapsed, and in front of them was Lee Ho-yol, standing right in front of the commander with his hand raised to hold back the madness. Stopping a barrage of blows with one gesture seemed incredible, and no one understood where the hero got such strength from. Lee Ho-yol put his hand forward and assumed a calm stance as a sign of urging him not to hit. Harkon stared at him with demonic eyes and froze as if something in his mind had awakened. Among the hazy vision and distorted demon field, Lee Ho-yol appeared as a clear radiance, and it seemed to many to be unlike a normal phenomenon. He assumed that it was an effect of his exorcism skill related to the aspect of resisting mental control. Harkon demanded to be named, and the threat of death became clear because silence could mean only one thing, and the hero's fate was sealed. Lee Ho-yol realized that lives depended on delay and said the name, then took a step and showed a gesture of reconciliation to reduce the intensity and return the warrior's self-awareness. Harkon did not understand the meaning of the gesture for a long time. Then his gaze fell on the brooch in the hero's jacket, a hexagonal artifact, a gift from the tower, which glowed with a white radiance. The memory of the days when Lee Ho-yol saved the order and when Harkon swore to be his sword surfaced in his mind and helped break the knot of obsession. The sudden restoration of sanity occurred instantly, and Harkon became himself for a moment, lowered his weapon, and made a gesture of reconciliation, making it clear that he was true to his oath. A system notification arrived about an increase in the level of the exorcism skill. It became clear that the skill had reached the second level and had shown new properties. While everyone was digesting what had happened, Harkon noticed the approach of danger and signaled that something capable of breaking into his body was flying towards him. The main character found himself in a demonic space in front of a throne where a man sat. These were the palaces of the mind, the embodiment of Sin. Sin explained that he once wanted to protect the kingdom of Yuzura, a land and sea where the soil was rich in precious stones and peace reigned. One day, a stranger arrived on their shores. The inhabitants welcomed him warmly, but in response, they received an invasion of the kingdom, trampled and plundered it. When he asked his enemies why, they only laughed and said that they could simply take everything away. And at that moment, demonic energy engulfed the young man's mind, turning him into sin. He declared that now everything belonged only to him, that the island, the ocean, and the sky were his, and that powerful gifts were hidden on the legendary islands. Lee Ho-yol started shouting that riches are futile and said that the only thing he can take away is the pride in the chest, then returned to the real world. Harkon immediately ran up and asked if everything was okay because the demon had just approached, and Lee Ho-yol immediately began to act. He concentrated the mana in his hand, directed it at the foundation of the palace, intervened slightly, and the palace began to crack. The stones were torn from the ground, the clutches broke, and the entire palace was destroyed into pieces. The blades of destruction tore the debris until it fell completely. The guilds watched and considered Lee Ho-yol a monster because the speed and power of his actions seemed inhuman. The protagonist felt his mana restored in incredible quantities. He gave himself some rest, but Granfell was against it and demanded that greed see the meaninglessness of wealth. The angry Sin turned into a demonic spirit and unleashed demonic energy on the fighters, threatening to engulf them all as dark threads of control began to thicken around them. The fighters realized that they had to endure and ordered the healers to put buffs, but the force worked differently and choked many. Leonie felt suffocated and could not stand the second the gaze of greed turned to her and threatened to turn everyone into undead so that they would stand forever, guarding the wealth. Namtae Min thought about the end of his life in despair and received a system message that his assessment was violated due to a desire that he could not control. Lee Ho-yol instantly gathered himself and dispelled the demonic energy. He destroyed the anomaly, and Sin did not understand how he managed to escape from under its dominion. Sin was dumbfounded. He was one of the 7 deadly sins, the embodiment of greed, and could not explain why the power over the mind had collapsed. Lee Ho-yol acted in order. He used the vampire sphere as an offering, then activated the second-level exorcism. The passive effect protected the allies, and the active effect involved the demon in the performer's consciousness. He took the sphere in his hand and cast a spell to awaken the last king of Yuzura, and the monster began to be sucked into the object. The sphere cracked from the inside. The demon screamed, but was pulled into it, and from the pile of remains of the palace, a man burst out who seemed to be the one who had finished with the sin and became part of the retribution. The monster exploded, and only one person remained of it. The one who had previously turned into Sin now found himself in the ruins of his fallen palace. Hundreds of notifications about the level increase passed through the hero's body, and the system recorded the increase in parameters, indicating that the exorcism had increased. As soon as he looked back, a hidden quest with a timer came, requiring a quick response. A new task appeared instantly, taking him by surprise. The main character immediately began to carry out a new quest, and in his mind, a task environment opened up where he had to return to the kingdom of Yuzura and encourage the king not to fade away, along with greed. Before him appeared a vision of a kingdom and a king ready to commit suicide for the sake of atonement, and 8 seconds remained to place the crown on the ruler's head and restore the will to live. Lee Ho-yol was confused because he did not understand where to find the crown, but he remembered that in one of the treasures he received a broken crown, and it could be used. He took out the crown, put it on the king's head, and felt how energy awakened in the giant's body and filled him with strength. The system issued a notification about the completion of the quest and announced that the secret of the Yuzura archipelago was beginning to unravel. The message instantly spread throughout the world. Players all over the world were surprised and alarmed as the first signs of the ancient kingdom awakening appeared, and blue clots of energy rose across the land and rushed into the sky. The earth cracked, and the ancient city began to rise from the soil, turning into a new region on the world map marked as the Kingdom of Yuzura. The last king of Yuzura, named Hakuna, came out of oblivion, and the system marked the main character as a savior, indicating that his influence in the new country had reached its limit. Hakuna expressed his gratitude and asked his name because the situation required official recognition of the good deed. Lee Ho-yol felt nervous and understood the need to be vigilant when dealing with the fallen king, but Granfell had spoken his name first and created a formality that had to be respected. Hakuna accepted the formality of promising to remember the name of the savior and spoke of being obsessed with greed and intending to destroy himself along with sin before a way to salvation was found. He wondered why Lee Ho-yol had intervened and wanted to understand what prompted the stranger to save the fallen monarch who had once destroyed his subjects with a mistake. At this moment, Shreg suddenly rushed to the scene, followed by his guild, and confusion arose over their hasty departure. Shreg explained that the emergence of Yuzura was a national renewal and that a new area had emerged on Earth with unimaginable resources and treasures to be explored. He noted that the kingdom hid ancient cities of rare monsters and resources, and that the restoration would bring huge profits to those who first seized the initiative. This explanation spurred the guild's expansionist motives, and Shreg was quick to seize the chance, believing that whoever was the first to collect the resources would gain a colossal advantage. Lee Ho-yol expressed the opinion that the right thing to do would be to restore the kingdom and return Hakun to rule, because honor and responsibility are more important than self-interest. The king was struck by the straightforwardness and at first did not believe that anyone was ready to help restore his lost pride. Lee Ho-yol explained that everything depends on the king's behavior and how he corrects his previous mistakes, and promised to help if the king really wants to act honestly. Hakuna smiled and said that this is what he wanted to hear, and at that moment a hidden quest opened up, recording the ruler's intention to revive Yuzura and return glory. While people were rejoicing and discussing the future, Shreg declared that restoration could only be achieved through joint efforts, and that his guild would provide any assistance. He noted that he had heard many stories about Lee Ho-yol, and it was important to meet him personally in order to coordinate actions and distribute resources. Shreg grabbed Lee Ho-yol's hand and shook it firmly, expressing eagerness. But after a moment, his face became embarrassed, and the atmosphere became heavy with awkwardness. Shreg stated that the entire Second Sun Guild was fans of Lee Ho-yol, and this created a strange, tense atmosphere among those present. Harkon shouted that Shreg had no mana left, and it sounded like an accusation of weakness in front of everyone. Shreg realized that he was fragile in the fight, and that his resources were depleted due to the destruction of the palace and the ritual he had performed earlier. Granfell felt very tired. His anger was strong, but he had spent too much magic and almost collapsed from exhaustion. He wanted to get home and sleep, but ignored the weakness and went to King Hakune with a business proposal, not wanting to show weakness. Meanwhile, the Berserker headquarters discussed Shreg's mistakes. The girls laughed and posted an article about his mistake, increasing the shame and ridicule. Nam Chul ran to his younger brother and said that he was proud of him because restoring the kingdom became their quest and opened up great prospects. Lee Ho-yol heard talk about the cost of restoration and knew that national renewal would bring enormous value to those who took it on. Requests to participate in the project poured in, and many people begged him for a chance to share the resources. The protagonist was exhausted and built a stone hut around himself to find solitude and try to regain his strength. He decided that he would not get home in this chaos and would go to the Tower of Magicians, where he could find shelter and resources for mana. Suddenly, Jessica appeared in front of him. Her appearance alarmed him because she again appeared as if from thin air and looked unusual. Jessica demonstrated the rules of polite Korean greeting. She was clearly preparing for an official meeting and was mindful of her manners. Granfell noted that he had no tea, but Jessica sat down and started a conversation, her questions concerning research skills and intervention in magic. She said that she had watched many videos of him and recognized his skills in matters of research and practical manifestation of magic. The day had been long, and Lee Ho-yol felt that there was much to think about, especially regarding the sin of greed and the nature of his power. He wasn't sure if the exorcism was the same as what he had used and expected that a demon of that order would behave differently in the presence of a demon hunter. Jessica asked if what he was using was really magic of a higher order. Her question hung in the air because the hero remained silent. Lee Ho-yol remained silent for a long time, looking tired and suspicious. Jessica moved closer to his face, trying to read the thought behind the mask of fatigue. Suddenly, Granfell opened his eyes sharply and realized that it was all a dream. In front of him lay a note from Jessica, in which she promised to come next time. The note was simple, and Jessica straightened his hair because it fell on his forehead. This gesture showed concern despite the hero's fatigue. Lee Ho-yol realized that he was exhausted and fell asleep right on his desk. He was ashamed of his own weakness in front of others. At that moment, a research quest came from Marcello, the tower's supreme mage, who invited him to participate in serious scientific work on magic. Lee Ho-yol knew that he had received a privilege thanks to Marcello, and that there would be an inspection after that. But now he felt sleepy and weak. Marcello entered the room and apologized, explaining that because of people's shortcomings, they doubt Lee Ho-yol, and it was important to prove himself in order to earn trust. Lee Ho-yol replied that if people lack faith, he would make them believe, and the willingness to accept it strengthened their resolve. Senior healer Mage Balea Yusia thought of him as a person with potential, but she understood that the sealed third-level magic cast by 3 senior mages would not allow him to enter the desired room. The researcher believed that it was impossible to prove qualification because the third-level protection blocked entry. Unexpectedly, he was able to do what was considered impossible. He knocked down the door with his hand, causing shock and distrust among the magicians. The magicians gasped when they saw how easily he destroyed the third-level defense. Even theorists couldn't repeat such a trick. The power coming from Lee Ho-yol was overwhelmingly strong and did not match his level. Granfell explained that the reason many of the mages had come was to meet in person, and the prank with the door was a test of the elder's readiness to take responsibility. He came close enough to Balea Yusia to frighten her, but in reality, he simply passed out from fatigue and fell asleep in the corridor. Lee Ho-yol realized that he had lost consciousness and needed to rest to avoid exhaustion. Granfell rose with difficulty and said that he would forgive everyone this time, but asked that such a thing not happen again, then left the room. Balea Yusia thought that this was not a simple joke, but a spell that even she could not turn, and this made her reconsider her assessment. One of the magicians remembered that this man was the researcher that Claire spoke of, the one who saw through the illusions of the tower's owner. Marcello recommended Lee Ho-yol to attend the conference because he could break through magical barriers, and many mages began to have a different attitude towards his abilities. Returning to the office, he noticed that the number of senior magicians recognizing his abilities had increased. 3 out of 20 were already looking at him with respect, although this was less than he expected. Lee Ho-yol understood that the senior magicians were strong in their fields, so even a small success was significant. But for him, it was more of a proof than a final victory. He decided to first get some sleep, then hand over the loot from Yuzra for evaluation, and only after that begin studying the materials and planning further actions. Suddenly, the piece of paper on the table began to move, and the magical parchment came to life, announcing that Marcello was imprinted on it and that it was a means of communication for magicians for urgent requests. Lee Ho-yol took the parchment and wanted to ask directly, but he pushed it away due to fatigue and irritation and threw it into the trash. The parchment returned to the air and conveyed Marcello's apologies for the rudeness of the senior mages, explaining that the Supreme Masters constantly test their dignity and demand proof. Marcello asked not to worry and admitted that he was wrong to communicate via parchment, noting that everything should have been discussed in person and with respect. Lee Ho-yol thought that the behavior of the senior mages was reminiscent of school fights for status, and considered such tests tiring and not always fair. Marcello explained that the checks were necessary, and that he had been through something similar himself, so he understood how difficult it was for Lee Ho-yol. Granfell listened silently and decided that underestimation was more dangerous than overestimation. Because it was easier to humiliate the underestimated, he preferred to respond with action, not with excuses. He decided that if anyone doubted, he would improve himself and turn the expectations of others into reality through actions, not words. Marcello apologized again and reassured Lee Ho-yol that everything would be fine and that appearing to the senior mages would be beneficial later. Lee Ho-yol knew that he had to earn respect and recognition, but now he felt very sleepy and tired, requiring rest. He realized that his level was below the masters and that it would be difficult to prove his worth, but he did not give up on the attempt. To restore his strength, he channeled energy through intervention and manifestation, concentrating the light streams and will into a simple action that inspired him. After a short burst, he returned to reality and realized that there was almost no mana left. The powerful ritual and the destruction of the palace had exhausted him. Marcello entered the room again and saw Granfell with a reserved face, trying to hide his fatigue and striving to rest. Meanwhile, Nam Chul and his younger brother were watching the news and were shocked that people didn't trust Lee Ho-yol, even though he had just done the impossible. The news was about the new field and how the noisy discussions of mages had changed ideas about power and responsibility, which irritated those who wanted simple answers. Marcello walked in and was surprised by the strange traces of magic. Lee Ho-yol tried to remain calm and asked what happened. Marcello asked if Lee Ho-yol had used magic in the office. He remembered that he had practiced basic light magic and was surprised himself. He explained that he was training and didn't want to ruin the office. But Marcello pointed out an unusual trace showing the sequence of interventions and manifestations. Marcello exclaimed that the marks were amazing as they showed the complexity and beauty of the process, and Claire stood behind him and was also amazed. The other mages rushed in and began to examine the tracks, asking if it was his work. Lee Ho-yol just looked on in confusion. Marcello admitted that it was not his work, but the traces were left by the player Lee Ho-yol, and the hall buzzed. No one expected this from the hunter. Lee Ho-yol was confused and decided to get home as quickly as possible and get some sleep. He understood that he couldn't stand it here any longer. The magicians asked him to stay and offered to pass the puzzle test, one of the most difficult tasks of the tower. The record for this problem was 9 days, 3 hours, 21 minutes. Marcello spent more than 10 days on it. But Lee Ho-yol snapped his fingers and solved the puzzle in 1 second. The magicians in the hall could not contain their indignation and surprise. After that, the number of senior mages who recognized him increased to 3 out of 20, a result less than expected, but significant for a newbie. Lee Ho-yol found himself surrounded by a crowd, photographed and questioned, but he found the intrusion rude and refused to answer. He was squeezed from all sides. He felt uncomfortable and did not see an easy way out. He was looking for a way to disappear from the crowd. Suddenly, he noticed a pink glow. The mana in the air changed. He saw an illusory wall and decided to go through it. Passing through the wall surprised the magicians, but Lee Ho-yol did not come out into the square. He found himself in Bele Yusia's room. She was also surprised. He noticed that the interference with the wall was similar to the illusion of the tower's owner, and realized that someone was returning the magic to its original state. When he walked through the portal, he actually found himself in the room with Belea. Belea Yusia smiled, which meant that she acknowledged his abilities and did not argue about what happened. Lee Ho-yol remembered Granfell's words about underestimating and taking action, so he proved his qualifications with his actions. He felt very exhausted and knew he urgently needed sleep, but Granfell insisted on another task and began to pull himself up, hiding his fatigue. Granfell's stamina and agility increased after completing his class quest again, giving him an advantage over players of his level. For a demon hunter, the stamina and agility bonuses didn't seem the most useful. He would have preferred more mana for melee combat. Granfell continued to develop his magical skills despite his fatigue, considering it part of his role and responsibility as a leader. He tried a new technique, concentrating mana around the kitchen knife, and it cut through the carrot and pierced the countertop as if it was filled with aura. After cutting the vegetable, he saw a sharp wave pass through the table and leave a cut in the wall. It was similar to a sword's aura, but it looked different. Lee Ho-yol was surprised and did not immediately understand the mechanism of the new effect in his light magic. The Yuzra Archipelago Restoration Team from the Berserk Guild began work on restoring the city and helped establish infrastructure. Leon watched the video on her phone with a frown. Her fighters noticed that something had changed in her mood compared to the workday. The news claimed that it was unknown who did the main work, and that the Knight's Order did most of the work, with Lee Ho-yol only finishing the job. This version meant that the contribution could not be definitively confirmed, and this made Leon furious. She threw the phone on the floor in anger because she could not accept false assumptions and considered the report a distortion of reality. The girl with pink hair came up and tried to calm him down, noticing that the master was in a bad mood and his anger was interfering with his work. She explained that these were rumors and black PR, and that the situation would soon calm down when the true facts became clear. A friend reminded them that after the restoration, they were promised increased influence and the status of aristocrats, which would help in the future. She added that working on the reconstruction would give the right to personal ownership and access to rare arcana resources, which gave her hope. Leon smiled, and her friend complimented her, saying that with a smile it was easier for her to conquer the world, which calmed her down a little. They discussed how the Kingdom Restore quest was a rare opportunity to gain mining rights and arcana without going into the rift. The thought that the rights to one mine were already incredibly valuable and that they would soon have allies willing to establish ties with Yuzra was a joy. While the girls were talking, Lee Ho-yol passed by and heard that they were discussing his name, and he felt awkward from the attention. The owner of the apartment next door came over and said that he had extended the lease because the main character seemed committed to the cause and a tidy tenant. Lee Ho-yol admitted that he lost control while using skills and showed the recovery score. He said that his health dropped after using the sword aura and that he was out of action for 6 days, later looking for information and only found fan web novels. The protagonist wondered if Hakuna could teach him how to control his strength and techniques, since he was currently unsure of his skills. Suddenly, a knight stopped him, explaining that entry into the kingdom was restricted and that one could not simply wander around the restored area without permission. Lee Ho-yol was surprised. The city looked open, but the knight insisted that access was only for citizens or those with an official pass. The knight politely but firmly refused and demanded that they leave, and the order of restoration was strictly observed. Lee Ho-yol was surprised that he was not recognized and thought that people were too zealous in following their duties and did not make exceptions. He said he had come to meet King Hakuna and was surprised that such a request could not be fulfilled without formal permission. The crowd was puzzled as to how he dared to address the royal power without official status, since this required authority. At that moment, Hakuna suddenly appeared and waved his hand happily as he approached the meeting place, causing amazement among those around him. The system message confirmed that Lee Ho-yol had revealed his name. Now his authority in the kingdom had been activated, his influence had reached its maximum, and his relationship with Yuzra had been confirmed. He joyfully turned to the savior and asked what brought him to the palace and what was the purpose of the visit, because the situation required an explanation. Lee Ho-yol said he needed to see Hakuna and permission to enter, but formalities prevented a direct conversation. Hakuna did not immediately understand because in the kingdom authority had a special meaning and did not coincide with fame. The king asked what he had done and how he was connected with the restoration, wanting to hear everything personally. Yasika Bright of the Lionheart Order was furiously scolding the warriors for their stances, demanding that they hold their swords straighter for combat with demons. She emphasized the need for mastery in every training session. Grand Fell, sitting with Harkon Kingsguard over tea, listened to his desire to understand the light of the sword's aura, noticed in battle. Harkon, surprised, asked if he had actually seen the light, explaining that it was impossible to sense it even after decades without talent. He admitted that Granfell was surprising, but he didn't think it was a coincidence. Harkon said that the sword's aura is not learned at will, and even to see it, one must train with the sword for decades. Lee Ho-yol insisted that he was able to manifest an aura and wanted to learn how to direct it with a sword. Harkon called Yasika Bright and ordered her to bring the sword and the lion's oath. Yasika confirmed and hurried to carry out the order. She led Granfell to the stone slab, the Oath of the Lion, a relic of the order created from a unique steel. The slab symbolized the inviolability of the oath and contained 2 scars from the commander and Harkon. When handing over the sword, Harkon offered to leave a 3rd scar as proof of the aura. One of the knights was indignant, but Yasika cut him off, trusting the commander. Lee Ho-yol refused the order's sword and took a training sword with a dull blade, surprising everyone. He concentrated his mana and cut the slab, leaving a huge aura scar. The knights did not believe that the magician was capable of such a thing. Granfell calmly asked if that was enough proof. Harkon was amazed and said that Lee Ho-yol constantly surprises him, and it is interesting to know the limits of his potential. He decided that it would be better to start by training with the Knights of the Order. Harkon explained that training always starts from the basics. Technique is most important. Yasika Bright, a master of the aura blade, was to supervise the training of the newcomer. Until then, it was forbidden to use aura, so as not to injure the body without endurance. Lee Ho-yol agreed and was ready to begin, happy with the commander's attention. The thought that he would learn and gain Harkon's favor encouraged him. Yasika introduced herself as an instructor and announced that the training would be tough and required a change of uniform. She reminded him that even though he had an aura, he was a mage first and foremost, and without stamina, she wouldn't be able to hold out. Everyone raised their swords and began to practice the basics of where the arm tensed at the moment of impact. The hero tried to replicate Harkon's technique in order to gain power and precision. He swung and swept away everything around him, striking with his strength and surprise. One knight asked his neighbor how he was able to repeat the commander's technique. Lee Ho-yol explained that he imitated Hakon's movement, causing everyone to be shocked. The knight said that this was impossible because the technique was considered the pinnacle of development, honed over decades. After a couple of attempts, he demonstrated a perfect reproduction of the technique, and everyone recognized his talent. Yasika turned pale and admitted that he had exceeded her expectations. Hakon realized that this was a rare gift and decided to take him under his wing. He suggested that Lee Ho-yol come under the wing of the order. Hakuna approached the commander and expressed concern for the health of the savior, offering to clear the area and create shade. He ordered the sand to be removed, trees to be planted, and the site to be made safe. And Hakon was surprised by the king's concern. He decided to go through training with the newcomer to set an example. The knights were surprised but accepted the conditions, and Jessica shouted to maintain discipline. Hakon offered Lee Ho-yol to join, but he doubted whether it would be treason. He agreed, and they made a training plan with Enoch and the knights for synergy and technique. An intense training session began where effort was mixed with awkwardness. In the Tower of Magicians, Mattis Dean Carl, a researcher of black magic, learned about new items for evaluation. He examined the artifacts and realized that one was connected to dark magic, which attracted him. Remembering Marcello's interest, he realized that among the things was a vampire orb, rare and valuable. Such finds rarely come from one person, and he is intrigued by the identity of Lee Ho-yol. Mattis ordered the parchment to be brought for communication and approval of the assessment. Meanwhile, the training was over. The knights were tired, but the hero continued to exhaust his body for the sake of the quest. Granfell felt exhausted, but he knew the mission required sacrifice. Hakon was inspired and suggested running another 20 kilometers for the sake of conditioning. Lee Ho-yol saw the increase in parameters. The fatigue retreated for a while, but he still wanted to sleep. He tried to explain that he needed sleep, but the parchment arrived with news from Mattis. Parchment reported that Mattis was ready to provide the results of the assessment and requested the rental of the vampire sphere. Mattis said that the sphere is a unique rank, level 400, and its properties are related to blood magic and damage. He explained that the sphere was rare and used by demons, so renting it was justified. Lee Ho-yol realized that he couldn't use it himself, but the rent was reasonable. He allowed the sphere to be rented and decided to discuss the return of the brooch later. Mattis went on to report other finds, including a high-quality emerald. He said that emerald restores stamina and is good for crafting. Unique grade koi silk scales are valuable for crafting fire, evasion, and aesthetic items. Mattis asked about her rent, and Lee Ho-yol thought about a new characteristic of aesthetics. He agreed to rent the scales and asked for an emerald for decoration and the scales for a scarf. Mattis warned of the high price, and Lee Ho-yol realized that rarity would determine the value. Granfell intervened and said that the price was not important. He expected a better result. Mattis was pleased with his approach and realized that Marcello had made the right choice in choosing Lee Ho-yol. Lee Ho-yol decided that the conversation was over and that he urgently needed some rest. Mattis left a note and suggested meeting at the Hanging Gardens to discuss the lease. Lee Ho-yol fell asleep immediately, and Mattis decided not to disturb him, leaving a letter. Dawn rose over the Yuzra archipelago, and the hero continued his daily training, strengthening his endurance. The loads became lighter. He got used to the rhythm, not missing a single repetition. Mattis realized he had not received an answer and flew back, politely asking for a meeting. He suggested meeting in the gardens tomorrow to discuss the results and the lease. Lee Ho-yol replied that he was currently busy training his sword aura and couldn't be distracted. Mattis specified the time frame, and the hero agreed to meet in 2 days at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Lee Ho-yol was surprised by the willingness to make time, since he had planned to sit in the tower for work and training. He didn't want to seem obligated, but he agreed and continued his studies, seeing the benefit of discipline. Harkon said that there was nothing more to teach at the basic level. Now the path of martial enlightenment was needed. The hero was surprised since he had only just started, but Harkon insisted and asked to show the basic techniques. He assumed that if the hero did not maintain the technique using the strength of his body, he would become exhausted again. Lee Ho-yol thought about it and realized that the aura was similar to magic and manifested regardless of class. He felt a new flow of energy and a blue aura lit up around the sword. After the experience, he realized that stability requires discipline and constant training. Even after yesterday's training, he continued to exercise in the morning, not wanting to stop. Harkon recognized pure talent and offered to guide him to the end of the sword's path. Lee Ho-yol said that he doesn't want to go completely down the path of the sword, but if he has to, he will accept it. Harkon happily agreed, and the knights were inspired and began to repeat the exercises. Yasika realized that the students had not reached the level and admitted that she had never met such a genius. She hoped to stand next to the masters and resigned herself to the gap in strength. Enoch felt embarrassed because Lee Ho-yol was far ahead, but he decided to train so that he could catch up one day. Harkon was pleased with the knights' enthusiasm and proud of their growth. Lee Ho-yol thought about it because Harkon said that he was already ready for a real fight, but he doubted the goals. The low-level monsters were gone. He was looking for a suitable opponent to test the aura. Suddenly, he noticed a level 300 silver leopard, and the system warned of a 74-level difference. The natural enemy skill didn't activate, and this scared him, because a mistake could cost him his life. He realized that the fight was mortally dangerous, and decided to use strategy to limit the enemy's mobility. Luckily, the captain of the Shadow Mercenaries, Kichi, intervened, clearing out some of the monsters and trying to figure out where the fighters had disappeared to. She noticed that 9 out of 10 members of her squad were missing, and she did not understand where so many animals came from. While she was looking around, her attention was drawn to Lee Ho-yol in battle with the silver leopard, and it seemed like he possessed a sword aura of an unusual level. She thought that there was much to learn from such a fighter, and that his swordsmanship was different from that of ordinary adventurers. Kichi decided not to interfere. Her squad was exhausted, and intervention could only hinder. She remembered her purpose and promised to the order, putting aside personal interest for the sake of duty and influence in the new kingdom. She realized that by restoring Yuzra, she could raise her status and become an aristocrat, and hurried to the gathering place. Lee Ho-yol grabbed his head, realizing that his condition was far from ideal and the sword aura might not last long. He knew the difference in levels made the fight risky, but he relied on technique and the ability to control the enemy. He remembered that he could limit the enemy's mobility with magic and then attack, which gave him confidence in his tactics. When the leopard pounced, he fought back, and the moment the paw approached, he prepared for the worst. Granfell stood calmly and confidently swung his sword, cutting the leopard in half with one blow. The blow was so clean that even the difference in levels did not prevent the enemy from being cut down, proving the power of the aura. The day of the meeting with Mattis Dingkarl arrived. He had been waiting for Lee Ho-yol for a long time to understand who he was dealing with. Mattis was a senior magician, a researcher of black magic, who had spent many years trying to prove the value of unconventional ideas. When Lee Ho-yol appeared in the gardens, Mattis felt the earth tremble as if his arrival had caused a resonance. Lee Ho-yol looked tired after working with the aura, but he bowed his head and said that it was nice to meet you. Mattis suggested sitting down and concentrated the energy in the rings. The air darkened with vibration. The color of the magical aura was unusually dark, and Mattis admitted that he had never seen such a rich signature in living magicians. Lee Ho-yol felt an anxious response, but he didn't immediately understand what exactly had interested the senior mage so much. Mattis spoke about his childhood, the ridicule of his peers, and the day he dropped a box of rare ingredients. His voice reflected years of struggle as he spoke of the scientific community scoffing at and dismissing any ideas about dark mana. He tried to convince his colleagues to see black magic as a working tool, and not just a taboo. Mattis recounted how he proposed the name black magic and tried to prove its benefits, but was met with contempt. He told of years of shame, of his research failing because he was left alone. Mattis acknowledged that meeting someone sensitive to black magic could open up new horizons. Lee Ho-yol noticed that his rings responded to Mattis and realized that his aura looked unusually dark. Thoughts of the past came flooding back, and he realized that he couldn't help but think about what he wanted to hide. Lee Ho-yol grabbed his head. The words about dark mana brought back memories of shame, and he felt awkward. Granfell noted that Mattis had entered too personal space and called it immodesty. Mattis apologized, acknowledged his rudeness, and explained that his passion for research had made him forget about tact. He promised to report his mistake to the elders and take steps to restore trust. Lee Ho-yol accepted the apology, saying that a scientist's curiosity is more important than formalities, especially in science. The conversation turned to the essence of black magic. Mattis said that its source is closely connected with the past of the magician. He explained that black energy is born in the heart, and the more difficult the past, the stronger the mana. Mattis was surprised to see the depth of Lee Ho-yol's sensitivity and wondered what trace had given rise to the power. Lee Ho-yol felt ashamed. Memories of the past washed over him, and he pulled away for a moment. Granfell noted that discussing someone else's history when first meeting them is unpleasant and violates respect. Mattis admitted his mistake, apologized again, and promised to be more careful. The conversation became professional, and Mattis suggested studying black magic together. He noted that collaboration with Lee Ho-yol could lead to a breakthrough in intervention research. Lee Ho-yol explained that he only had an hour before he had to return to training. Mattis agreed and set up a meeting 2 days later to discuss details and artifacts. The number of senior magicians who acknowledged Lee Ho-yol increased from 8 to 9, and Mattis was included among them. Lee Ho-yol realized that if he lingered, Mattis might grab him, and decided to leave after apologizing. Returning to his office, he again immersed himself in books to relieve tension and organize his thoughts. Soon, a message arrived from Marcello, congratulating him on his confession in the tower, which brought relief and fatigue. All the senior mages followed Mattis's example and recognized his class, which meant an increase in influence. Lee Ho-yol realized that formal recognition came quickly, but with it came increased responsibility. The news reported that Yuzura began to attract large investments. The Gowan and Berserk guilds actively invested. Experts said the decision to invest was wise, and the benefits would be long-term, adding to the excitement. The Gaon Guild suddenly rose in the rankings, increasing competition between associations and investors. At the Nam House, the two brothers were watching the news. Nam Tai Min Riley noted that their success was partly due to Lee Ho-yol. Nam Chul believed that Lee Ho-yol's contribution was decisive and that the chance should be used to complete the recovery quest. The news discussed the behavior of the Mythology Guild and the reaction of the National Assembly, which surprised observers. There were rumors of negotiations between the masters and the deputies, which caused disputes about morality and the future distribution of resources. The leader of mythology, Bik Yi-sol, decided to cancel her plans and head to Yuzura to strengthen the guild's position. She called the secretary and asked to postpone the meeting, explaining the urgency of the visit. A new function appeared in the Mage Tower, but Lee Ho-yol didn't understand its essence. Suddenly the phone vibrated, and he didn't understand who was writing. These were his sisters, but he did not understand why they needed to write at this time. Lee Ho-yol guessed that this was a message from the Tower of Mages and made a magic parchment. Parchment introduced himself as the senior Mayan mage, apologizing for his persistence. She reported that now, working with the supreme mage, he was almost at the same level and prepared what she had promised. She was interrupted by another Parchment, Vangrit Tom, who sent a gift for the introduction. Dozens of Parchments burst into the room trying to contact him. Lee Ho-yol decided to run away from them because it was unbearable. At Yuzura's palace, Hakuna laughed while talking to Lee Ho-yol, showing that the hero's arrival had brought peace and order. Lee Ho-yol agreed that this was the case. Hakuna said that this means becoming the supreme mage's partner, and the senior mages show sincerity. Lee Ho-yol noted that he does not take bribes, even in the form of showing sincerity. Hakuna laughed, agreeing that it was like him, and joked about the deadly sin of greed. He asked if he had seen the Gaon Guild video on YouTube, which showed how the hero dealt with the great evil. The video arrived on his phone, and he remembered that he forgot to reply to the message. He apologized to his sister, but she yelled at him, saying that she had had enough and that he was not a sin. His niece also tried to contact him. One sister was angry. The other praised him for the video with 100 million views. Lee Ho-yol thanked him and ended the call. He asked for a place to rest. Hakuna offered a dukedom, but Lee Ho-yol said that a simple room would be enough. He walked in, undressed, and sat on the bed, feeling awkward. He decided to check the video and find out who allowed the Gaon Guild to upload it without consent. He was about to file a complaint, but he felt a strange sensation in the room. Sensing the dust, he immediately began to clean. At the Gaon Nam camp, Tai Min was surprised and his finger trembled. He asked Nam Cheol about the reason for the stock change and heard about the rumors from the Mythology Guild. Nam Tae Min was angry at the constant setups and ordered to collect links to articles. Nam Chul thought that they should split the quest before the influence of mythology became stronger. He saw a headline about a love affair between Gaon and mythology, which seemed absurd. Nam Tai Min yelled at Bik Yi Sol, blaming her, even though he actually hated her. Bull Yi Sol came in and asked where he heard that. She said she was surprised by his knowledge of her and impressed by his attention. Nam Tai Min didn't understand how this happened because the guild was supposed to be on guard. He ran out and saw that the guards were lying on the floor. Nam Chul turned to the girl Misa and said that attacking the guild members would have consequences. Bull Yi Sol said that they themselves had nothing to do with it and directed demonic energy at her elder brother. Nam Chul didn't understand what this feeling was, but he understood that she was influential and the head of the guild. The Mythology Guild rose to 41st place, although it was previously insignificant. Nam Tae Min noticed her strange behavior and accused her of overstepping her bounds. Nam Chul wondered how she did it, maybe with mind control magic. He tried to warn his younger brother, but his body wouldn't listen. Bull Yi Sol said that there was no need to fight and everything happened just like the first time. Nam Chul remembered the terrible past, but Lee Ho-yol appeared near the guild, noticing the guards on the floor. He entered the tent, which had not yet been cleaned from the previous cleaning, and felt irritated. Bull Yi Sol was surprised by such a quick appearance, and Lee Ho-yol immediately understood there was a demon in front of him. He was furious and accused her of posting the video without her consent. Lee Ho-yol showed a video that has already collected millions of views. Bull Yi Sol laughed, explaining that the purpose was to learn more about Gaon, and he came on his own. She noted mockingly that his name was Svetoch Yuzri, but in life he looked different. Lee Ho-yol confirmed his name. Bull Yi Sol said that even a small mortal sin suits her. She admitted that her interest in him made it easier to capture Yuzra. As she approached him, she received a slap in the face from Lee Ho-yol. He demanded an explanation from Nam Tae Min for Gaon's actions. Nam Chul admitted that they spread false rumors about privileges. They uploaded a video to clarify the situation. He apologized, acknowledging the misunderstanding. Bull Yi Sol was indignant, asking how he could treat her like that. Lee Ho Yol coldly replied that she understood everything and pointed out her manners. She stated that he interrupted her conversation, but people are just prey to her. Bull Yi Sol assured that Lee Ho Yol would not be able to resist her charms. She activated the skill, and Lee Ho Yol received a message that natural enemy had been triggered. He realized that there was a demon in front of him. The atmosphere became tense. Reporters burst into the tent and started filming everything on cameras. The crowd outside surged inside, disconcerting those present. Nam Chul sarcastically asked if Bik Yi Sol thought she was good at manipulating the media. He noted that the power of the media now is YouTube, and journalists continued to film. Lee Ho Yol noticed that the skill was activated because of Bik Yi Sol. She suggested continuing the conversation elsewhere. He refused, demanding to learn manners first. Bull Yi Sol, the head of a business and guild, had 60 million subscribers. Everything she wore or held became a trend. Her personality embodied the guild's motto, mythology does not merge. She was adored, but Lee Ho Yol rejected her, causing ridicule. Bull Yi Sol didn't understand why her seduction skills didn't work. She was seething with anger and promised not to forgive the insult. In a rage, she smashed the mirror. A demon spoke from the fragments, ordering silence. He reminded her that she herself asked for help and achieved everything thanks to him. The demon asked what her problem was. Bull Yi Sol shouted that she did not want to die and the demon should die in her place. The demon was surprised and reminded her that without him, she would have received nothing. She grabbed the shard and blood started flowing. After hitting himself several times, the demon asked in a panic if she had gone crazy. Bull Yi Sol said that she knew her limits, but the demon shouted that she was joking. She objected that she received everything as the daughter of the director of mythology. The demon realized that her will was stronger than his, and without her, he was nothing. Bull Yi Sol was weakening, but she declared that she was not afraid of death. The demon screamed in despair. Suddenly, Lee Ho Yol found himself in a strange space with her. She noticed him and declared that she wanted revenge. I tried to heal myself, but I didn't have enough strength. The assistant noticed the blood and shouted for immediate hospitalization. Lee Ho Yol's natural enemy skill was still burning. He realized that before him was a curse that creeps in the night. He noted her impudence, but decided to be hospitable to the demon. The demon entered the room through the window. Lee Ho Yol was surprised by her impudence. The demon apologized, but Lee Ho Yol noticed that something was wrong with her. He suggested that she might have been sealed, but the demon mockingly denied it. The demon said that Bik Yi Sol had been dead for a long time after attempting suicide. She mocked the girl for foolishly trying to threaten the demon. Lee Ho Yol demanded an explanation. The demon only asked if he wanted to know the truth. She revealed that Bik Yi Sol died because of him, starting a tragic story. Ox Yi Sol was illegitimate and was written about from the age of 8. She was bullied at school and her mother committed suicide. Her father called her a mistake, but accepted her so as not to leave her without parents. The demon told how Ox Yi Sol awakened her hunting abilities and her father forced her to work. She tried to earn his love and take revenge, but she turned out to be empty. The demon promised to repay Lee Ho Yol, but she died in vain. Lee Ho Yol ordered her to be silent, calling the demoness pathetic. His pressure proved too much for her mental strength. The demon experienced horror from the abnormal status. Lee Ho Yol shouted at her to run, stating that he would not negotiate. He came out of the bloody space. The exorcism skill was activated. He saw a child who looked like Granfell in the mind chamber. I tried to get closer, but felt a sharp pain in my heart. Returning to reality, he saw Granfell performing an exorcism ritual. He realized that synchronizing with Granfell's past caused the same emotions. Lee Ho-yol stood in front of Big Yi-sol's body, determined to destroy all the demons. He could not forgive the demoness for insulting and mocking her victim. Despite the demon's attacks, he released dozens of magical blades. The demon in the body of Bull Yi-sol managed to bow her head, preparing for death. Demonic energy flared up, and the body fell to the floor. Lee Ho-yol walked up to her and asked if she could hear him after seeing her pride. The girl raised her head with difficulty and whispered that it was amazing. Lee Ho-yol realized that she was having a hard time and decided to give her a rest. He suggested going home to recover. He picked her up, remembering the demon's words about self-harm, but there were no visible wounds. Decided to lay it down for restoration. Jessica Bright burst into the room, reporting a patrol. She found Lee Ho-yol covering Big Yi-sol with a sheet and apologized. Lee Ho-yol explained that he was just covering her up, and Jessica became embarrassed. She added that the squad would leave soon and everything would be fine. Enoch ran out, shouting that Lee Ho-yol was a fool. Jessica tried to stop him. Lee Ho-yol was left alone, feeling tired, wondering about the end of the day. The class quest was still hanging in front of him, and he thought that fighting a mortal sin would be easier. He decided to accept the quest, but felt a bad feeling. In Arkan, they discussed a new update with the opening of the city of Permafrost. Permafrost is a major metropolis with shops and forges. Hui Gang hosted the broadcast, and viewers were delighted with the update. The Arcana News featured a broadcast about Permafrost, and the players were happy. Lee Ho-yol was shocked because the quest was to attack the Demon King. The quest required exploring the northern city of Permafrost and stopping the growing Demon King. Lee Ho-yol was shocked to learn that Permafrost had appeared in the metropolis. He didn't believe that the ruler of the city was the Demon King. The image reminded Akshan. I remember that the Demon Kings are extremely powerful and ranked. Even low-ranking ones are dangerous, and few hunters survive. The fighter advised to memorize everything about the Demon Kings. Lee Ho-yol's task. The class quest required knowledge of the Demon Kings in order to destroy them. He studied the information, spending hours cramming. Granfell noted the value of time spent learning. Lee Ho-yol saw a comment that he would make an effort to enter the Permafrost. He was not taken seriously and was accused of trying to make money. The Permafrost was huge, and he doubted the Demon King would be able to control the city. I decided to check the items from the Tower of Mages before the trip. The delivery bird reported that the order had arrived and asked for his name. Bird complained that contactless delivery makes work more difficult. Lee Ho-yol was surprised by the manner of communication and was happy with the timely delivery. The package contained a pure emerald ring with stamina restoration. The ring restored health when receiving damage without any additional conditions. Lee Ho-yol acknowledged the quality and value of the ring. Billions, possibly trillions. The second item is a koi scale scarf with the effects of increasing affinity, fire, and aesthetics. Taking the handkerchief, he was struck by its magnificence. Granfell approved of the choice. He realized that such masterpieces were worth billions. Taking the payment letter, Lee Ho-yol panicked, fearing that he would lose everything. The aesthetics characteristic was unlocked. Granfell was pleased. Lee Ho-yol didn't know what to do with the points he got for exercising the succubus. Marcello sent a vest that matched the scarf perfectly. He felt lucky, but received a new quest, Attack on the Demon King. In Japan, the Inazuma Guild is worried about Gaon's loss in the rankings. Leader Hisagi Kazuma called it a disgrace and promised to fix it. The fighters warned of possible harakiri. Hisagi confirmed his determination. He learned that Permafrost had appeared near Hokkaido and declared it a secret. He explained that the government would give time to influence Permafrost. The fighters asked about the access block. Hisagi called Permafrost a city of barbarians. He vowed to rectify the situation and sent the guild to Hokkaido. Speaking with the analyst, He demanded responsibility for his frivolity. The journalist informed the director that news about Merzlot was already online. The Shining and Berserker guilds immediately headed to Hokkaido. Permafrost was a base for the barbarians, with shops and forges, an important event. The adventurers gathered at the portal in Hokkaido. Namtai Min was furious. Nam Chol didn't understand what was happening. The guards were demanding passports. The guards refused not only Gaon, but all the guilds. Inazuma was in a hurry to get ahead of the others by at least 10 minutes. When they arrived, they were horrified. The city was full of cruel demons with claws. Hisagi Kazuma encountered a monster and realized that he should have been afraid all along. A few hours earlier, at Lee Ho-yol's residence in the Yuzura archipelago, Bik Yi-sol was still sleeping. But the protagonist woke her up. She jumped up abruptly, surprised to be alive, and couldn't figure out when she'd lost consciousness. Hoping she hadn't embarrassed herself too much, clutching her head, she suddenly burst into tears, remembering how he called her amazing and declared that she owed him her life, asking how she could now pay for all the inconvenience he had caused. Lee Ho-yol, while looking at the class quest, realized that the Demon King had begun to act in the permafrost. But the quest progress bar remained empty, and he wondered if it would only appear upon arrival. He decided that he had to go, but first he wanted to make sure that Bull Yi-sol was okay. She had already woken up and was waiting for him, thanking him for saving her and sincerely apologizing for the trouble she had caused. She declared that she was ready to pay in any way, even with her heart or dignity, if he wished. Granfell thought about it and decided that he could ask for payment for the items made in the Tower of Mages by taking out an envelope with a request for payment. Lee Ho-yol was overjoyed, thinking that he would escape debt and become rich. But upon opening the envelope, he discovered that the Tower of Mages does not charge a fee to mages of the supreme level and above for striving for the stars. He was surprised that the items were free, assuming it was due to the tower's new feature, and mentally thanked Marcello. After some thought, he decided to ask for mythical rank tea. But at that moment, Harkon Kingsguard entered the room, surprised that Lee Ho-yol already had a guest. Harkon mentioned the rumors about Enoch bursting into tears after Lee Ho-yol rejected him and confirmed that they were true. King Hakuna followed Harkon in, declaring that he had come to discuss important business with their savior, and the knights escorted him here. Lee Ho-yol felt that more and more people were coming to him each time. Bull Yi-sol, apologizing for the late introduction, introduced herself as the master of the Mythology Guild and greeted the king and his retinue. Harkon, turning on the diplomacy mode, called her a beauty, as they say about her. Hakuna, apologizing for the late intrusion, said that he came for Lee Ho-yol's wise advice. He said that a resident of Arcana had recently settled in Yusra, wanting to start from scratch, but his past behavior left much to be desired, and the king wanted to entrust his fate to Lee Ho-yol. He offered to bring the man, but added that the guests sneaking around his kingdom at night must leave. Lee Ho-yol froze, realizing that Hakuna was referring to Bull Yi-sol as the uninvited guest. He called her over and suggested that she return home, writing down how far mythology was willing to go for Yuzura's sake, and bring the recording to the next meeting to make amends with Hakuna. Bull Yi-sol got the hint and was happy about the prospect of meeting again, but Lee Ho-yol noticed her reaction and froze. She explained that she was harboring sinful thoughts, but he only turned away and apologized to the king, saying that he had to leave immediately. Hakuna, not understanding, asked why he was in a hurry, and Lee Ho-yol explained that it was because of the permafrost. Harkon was surprised and asked for clarification. Lee Ho-yol revealed that the Demon King had appeared, and his class quest, which was half full, required him to go to Hokkaido, or else the quest would fail. Meanwhile, at the portal to the Hokkaido permafrost, Namtai Min was furious. yelling at the guards to get out of the way as something was clearly wrong. The guards replied that they could not let him through without a passport, which was unacceptable. Nam Tai Min was indignant, asking if they really wanted to start a war and didn't know who he was. He mentioned Hisagi Kazuma, adding that Inazuma had not risen in the rankings despite their efforts. The head of the Shining Guild unexpectedly intervened, saying that she did not want to interfere so as not to embarrass herself, but she did not like the situation either. He hinted at the Americans' authority, and the guards suddenly retreated, fearing a violation of the AAI agreement that could lead to an international incident. The fighters began to move aside, and Nam Tai Min did not understand why this happened, suspecting the influence of the American. At that moment, one of the guards exclaimed that Raksu had sent a recording from a drone where the Inazuma Guild was suffering from huge demons in the permafrost. Hisagi Kazuma reported that the government was going to send bombers, but he shouted for them not to interfere with the players as the rift was in an accessible area and the weapons could kill them. Hisagi didn't know how to deal with the situation, and at that moment, one of his fighters was torn apart by a demon right before his eyes. The monster appeared before Hisagi, and he realized that it was total extermination. Suddenly, Nam Tai Min appeared in front of him, cutting the demon in half. Hisagi was shocked, not understanding how Nam Tai Min ended up here, But he called him a coward, accusing him of dishonesty and claiming that he saved him only thanks to Lee Ho Yol. Hisagi, not understanding what was being said, turned around and saw Lee Ho Yol's silhouette on the cliff. Lee Ho Yol, who had arrived as reinforcements, ordered his army to advance, and they rushed into battle, exterminating the demons. Surveying the area in the bloody light, he noted with disgust that the historical permafrost allowed the Demon King to mock the inhabitants by putting their bodies on display. He called it a pathetic and laughable insolence, ensuring that the Demon King would receive a proper end. The quest bar continued to decrease, showing only 20% progress, and Lee Ho Yol realized that there was almost no time left. Lee Ho Yol thought he was incredibly lucky, and Harkon Kingsguard announced that he would go with him. A few hours earlier, at Lee Ho Yol's residence in the Yuzra archipelago, King Hakuna declared that he would not allow the Savior to go to the permafrost alone. Despite his confidence in his abilities, since the Demon King was a huge threat, he asked to postpone the exit until the fighters were assembled. Harkon Kingsguard added that Lee Ho Yol's life was in danger, but Granfell coldly replied that the demons must be exterminated and no one's life was a reason for delay. Harkon remembered that Lee Ho Yol had always been like this and promised that he would not let him go alone as the knights noticed that the number of survivors was falling. He recalled that he had sworn to return to the king after exterminating all the demons and become his sword, inspired by Lee Ho Yol's will. Hakuna called the Savior magnificent, adding that with Harkon, he would be at peace. Lee Ho Yol asked who would protect the king then, and suddenly, Bul Yi Sol volunteered, declaring that she would take on this role to atone for the trouble she had caused in Yuzre. Hakuna agreed, wishing the Savior a safe return and the return of permafrost. Lee Ho Yol, respecting the king's will, placed his hand on Harkon's shoulder and said that they would hurry. In the present, at the southern gate of permafrost, Hisagi Kazuma asked Nam Tai Min what he meant by Lee Ho Yol's nobility. Nam Tai Min explained that as soon as Lee Ho Yol passed through the portal, he declared the main task to be rescuing the survivors. Unlike others who are just trying to curry favor for the sake of ratings, he added that even Japan wanted to destroy permafrost along with the demons, considering them competitors. The Knights of the Lionheart quickly cleared the area in front of the southern gate, confirming their title as the strongest in the empire, allowing them to enter the city faster than expected. Meanwhile, the Shining Guild, who were at the western gate, noticed that something was wrong, as they had long since passed the gate. Rox mentioned a funny post on the Arcana forum titled Golden World that had less than 10 views, but the author stubbornly repeated that there was a demon king in permafrost and called for running or fighting to save the survivors. Hui Gang, the streamer, suddenly appeared and apologized for spending the entire night looking for information about the permafrost update. Rox looked up and saw a blue glow in the sky and admitted that he was wrong in thinking that Lee Ho Yol was weaker than himself. In front of them, the light magic created by Lee Ho Yol, using interference and manifestation, floated, freezing the city gate. Jessica, watching this, admired the beauty of the magical traces, and all the magicians around probably shared her opinion. Rox admitted that he was completely wrong when he called Lee Ho Yol a monster. At that moment, the city gates began to open, and a common quest, liberation of permafrost, appeared before all participants. The city fell into the hands of the Demon King, and it must be liberated, and valor will be rewarded. Rox remembered that besieging a gate was considered a significant contribution, but Lee Ho Yol was already at the southern gate, so the Shining Ones hurried to the other gate. Harkon Kingsguard, observing this, called Lee Ho Yol's actions amazing, stating that he had never seen such a siege, and asked for the order to attack. Lee Ho Yol refused, feeling the increasing unpleasant aura after the gate was destroyed, and was sure that there was someone inside. He ordered Harkon to stand still and shouted for everyone to retreat, as there were demons inside. Nam Tae Min barely heard him, as he found himself being attacked by hundreds of demons chasing him from behind. Lee Ho Yol realized that he was about to be dragged beyond the walls and shouted loudly to the Lionheart Knights to rush to help. Jessica Bright wasted no time in activating her skill, and with one swing of her sword, she cut down all the monsters standing behind Nam Tae Min, declaring that they would continue their advance. Nam Tae Min, when he first saw this technique, assumed that it was a barbaric style. Lee Ho Yol, however, noticed that this was not all and shouted at Yoshika to be careful as more monsters appeared above them. The guards rushed forward, but suddenly unfamiliar people appeared in front of them. Their leader, using a fishing line, cut down all the monsters and shouted to a certain Alkari to set up a portal nearby. Granfell, not understanding where they came from, noted that these people were not from the Tower of Mages, but their ability to create portals surprised him. The leader of the group stated that the portal was pointing downwards and advised not to be afraid and use it. Without thinking, Harkon Kingsguard shouted that he was going to attack, and Lee Ho Yol ordered to follow him. He suspected that the portal led downwards and feared that passing through it might be a trap, but decided to stay for now. Unexpectedly, Kichi of the Shadow Mercenaries and her squad transferred all of their battle contribution points to Granfell. Lee Ho Yol didn't understand what this meant, but Harkon reminded him that he was the commander. Kichi extended her hand, introducing herself as the captain of the Shadow Mercenaries dispatched by King Hakuna, and expressed her desire to fight shoulder to shoulder. Harkon, pleased with the reinforcements, clarified that it was not he who was in command, but Lee Ho Yol. Kichi, surprised that the famous Lee Ho Yol was in front of her, considered it a stroke of luck, hoping to earn bonuses in Yuzra. Remembering how she had met him on the island and left him alone against the Emerald Leopard, she felt ashamed. Lee Ho Yol, standing in front of the notification about 35,000 contribution points for opening the gate, didn't know whether it was a lot or a little, but he noticed that the points kept increasing. Meanwhile, at the eastern gate of Permafrost, reporters launched a special broadcast reporting that the guild, united by Heaven, the second in the ranking, had begun a siege as part of the general quest Liberation of Permafrost. Each of the castle's 4 gates became the arena of heated battles. United by Heaven, superior in numbers to other guilds, confidently carried out the siege, sending reinforcements to the front lines. Their guild master, Liu Genshin, who was ranked 4th in the player rankings, had accumulated 1,812 contribution points, the highest among those who revealed their stats. He knew that the Radiants were good at individual fights, but in an organized siege, they were no match for his guild. Liu Chenchun, confident that with such a number of points he was worthy of ruling Permafrost, shouted to his soldiers to begin the assault. However, Lee Ho-yol's points, which had already reached 35,000, continued to rise even though he hid them. At the southern gate, Lee Ho-yol stood in front of the castle with the Gaon Guild, Lionheart, and the Shadow Mercenaries. He was wary of traps, but was glad that the Shadow Mercenaries had volunteered to scout the area through the portal. Kichi, still feeling ashamed from their previous encounter, was afraid that Lee Ho-yol would want to take revenge for her running away from the leopard. She knew that her squad of elite specialists under her command carried out missions by any means necessary, without caring about their epicness. Lee Ho-yol decided that these were probably the ones Hakuna was talking about, and the help came in handy. One of the mercenaries, having examined the area through the portal, reported that no one was hiding nearby, but going through the gate was dangerous due to the many traps that could kill even a dragon. He added that when he tried to create a portal inside the gate, some powerful force interfered. Lee Ho-yol realized that this was the influence of the Demon King and declared that they needed to find another way. Jessica Bright came up and reported a secret passage under the permafrost, a huge evacuation shelter with underground passages, one of the entrances of which is located near the castle walls. She was sure that the survivors were there. Nam Tae Min exclaimed that he had heard of it, and his sword technique reminded him of the barbarian style from Permafrost. Jessica confirmed that she was a barbarian and pointed in the direction of the entrance. Nam Tae Min assured that the commander had nothing to worry about, since the shelter under the permafrost was huge like the catacombs under Paris, and the survivors should be there. Lee Ho-yol, looking at the decreasing survivor bar, headed towards the entrance with Nam Tae Min. He was surprised that the entrance was hidden by a spell visible only to the inhabitants of the permafrost and barbarians, and appeared untouched. Upon opening the door, they found numerous corpses and evidence of a demonic ritual, indicating the summoning of a demon. A notification appeared in front of Lee Ho-yol that he had entered Permafrost, a city that had turned into hell. Panicked, Kichi was outraged that they were tasked with carrying out the bodies, not understanding why they should do so when the Demon King's army could attack at any moment. Her soldiers explained that this was why they were standing guard, but Kichi called it a waste of time, insisting that they needed to quickly engage in battle and finish off the demons so they could return home. She asked Alkari if Hakuna really hated them for giving them such a task. But Alkari replied that if she could read magical traces, she would understand the intention of the gentleman in a suit, and advised her to be patient. As they walked through the underground passage, they saw many corpses, and Jessica Bright approached Lee Ho-yol and thanked him for allowing them to take out the bodies. She explained that Perslota is her homeland, and she does not know how to repay this debt. Lee Ho-yol, understanding her feelings, replied that he did not do this just for her sake and asked her not to worry, adding that it would be wrong to neglect the fallen soldiers, even if it threatened his life. He noticed that his contribution points had risen to 41,000, but he didn't understand why, since the Shadow Mercenaries were fighting outside and wouldn't have informed him of it. Suddenly, one of the knights ran up, reporting that they had found an underground area where bodies were being led from other passages. He explained that all the passages were filled with summoning circles, created using blood and bodies to summon the Demon King, similar to the sacrifices in an exorcism ritual. These circles connected into a single giant summoning circle, and removing the bodies increased the contribution points as they disrupted the offering to the demons. Lee Ho-yol asked where Harkon Kingsguard was, and the knight replied that he already knew about it and would join soon. The ground beneath his feet shook, and Lee Ho-yol, who at first thought it was an earthquake, realized that it was the clatter of hooves of approaching demons. He shouted for everyone to get ready, calling it an ambush and cursing the demons for touching their offerings. The Demon King's army came towards them, but Lee Ho-yol realized that this was not an ambush, but a retreat. Nam Te Min and Harkon Kingsguard chased the demons to this place and wanted to report the offerings. But Li Ho Yol already knew everything. Nam Te Min pointed out that monsters were lined up nearby, and Li Ho Yol realized that they were scum-checking the summoning circle they had broken. He guessed that an elite would arrive soon, perhaps a demon commander. Suddenly, the demon commander appeared in front of them, and Li Ho Yol, not understanding where he came from, tried to throw rocks at him with magic. But the demon easily got out, surprised by the unusual spell. Harkon Kingsguard instantly recognized him as the commander from the Northwest Valley he had fought 10 years ago. The demon, also recognizing Harkon, mockingly asked why he looked the same, despite the rumors that people age quickly. He added that in Arcana, 4 days are equal to 1 day in the real world, and during this time, the demons who fought in the wars became 4 times stronger. Bloody energy swirled around the demon, and he stated that he had no time for weaklings, offering to find him if they could. With these words, the demon developed demonic wings and took off, and the castle rose into the air. Kichi, frozen in place, did not understand what caused the shaking, and the Shining Guild, seeing the floating castle, was in shock. The demon challenged them, declaring that he would meet them personally if they reached him. A new class quest has appeared before Li Ho Yol to deal with 10 of the Demon King's generals scattered throughout the permafrost, with the current progress being 0 out of 10. Harkon Kingsguard looked around, amazed as the demon began to retreat and the ceiling of the underground passage began to collapse. Yasika Bright shouted to Li Ho Yol that their exit was blocked by debris and the entire city began to shake. They wondered if the only way out was through the crack in the ceiling. Yasika noted that the underground catacombs connect the entire city, and if they collapse, the surface will be severely damaged and the survivors will be under attack. In the worst case, permafrost will be completely destroyed, even if it is liberated. Harkon did not know how to restore the blocked passages, realizing that it was dangerous to remain. Li Ho Yol, while creating magic in his hand, knew that he wouldn't be able to hold the entire tunnel network with his mana, risking being crushed. Nevertheless, he decided to continue. Suddenly, a bright blue light illuminated the sky, and the survivors on the surface, including a child looking out of a window, noticed him. Delighted, the child's mother ordered the curtains to be closed, fearing that the demons would notice the light. The scouts returned and reported to Karen that the demons who defended the southern gate were dead, and it was all thanks to Li Ho Yol. The Knights of the Lionheart were amazed by his power, not believing that he was capable of holding up the catacombs with mana alone. The aesthetics characteristic was activated, automatically applying the effect to the target, as Granfell saw in the Warriors of Permafrost the desire to protect the homeland. Li Ho Yol decided to take on their will, even if it meant his own death. He spent all his mana to create magical supports to hold the castle, and without the hexagonal brooch, which restored 10% of his mana, he wouldn't have been able to cope. These supports, similar to statues due to their aesthetics, did not require much effort, which Li Ho Yol compared to free skins in games, although he did not understand their true value. Harkon, looking at the columns, remembered that a day in this world was equal to 4 days in Arkan, and if the demon had been defeated earlier, Permafrost would have avoided this fate. He lamented that the demon had escaped again and felt unworthy to see the king's face. Suddenly, the team noticed a shadow, bats flying towards them. They assumed that the light had attracted them, but the mice were weak and the knights prepared to destroy them. However, Li Ho Yol felt that something bigger was approaching. A notification informed him that there was a demon nearby, and the skill Natural Enemy was activated, enhancing his combat abilities. Hellbird, a level 500 demon commander, appeared before him, ready to devour him. Li Ho Yol, drained of mana, was in danger, but Jessica suddenly appeared, destroying Birdie with one blow. She admitted that she had been unable to create magical traces like his, but asked how she had managed it. Lee Ho-yol thanked her for saving him, noting that the fight was made more difficult by the environment and unforeseen consequences. Meanwhile, the shadow mercenaries standing guard were puzzled as to why they were being ignored. Alkari told Kichi to be quiet as he sketched the magical traces seen after the earthquake when the castle rose into the sky. No one explained to them what was happening, and they thought about going to the others themselves, but noticed demons surrounding the gate. The mercenaries prepared to fight to defend their position, realizing that the demons were advancing. Lee Ho-yol's class quest counter showed that he had dealt with one of the 10 demon generals. He realized that Jessica destroying Hellbird had given him the victory, and he didn't have to eliminate the generals himself. Nam Tai Min approached Lee Ho-yol, informing him that they had finished transporting the bodies to the shelter, but according to the Gaon Guild's analysts, there were no survivors, although the drones were still exploring the complex underground tunnels. Lee Ho-yol nodded, noticing that the survivor bar was still visible on the interface. Alkari created a portal and, to his surprise, discovered that he could consistently open portals even inside the castle. He wanted to report, but a barbarian suddenly came out of the portal, asking if Lee Ho-yol was the one in charge here, and if he was the one who created the recent Pillar of Light. Other barbarians then began to emerge from the portal, and Nam Tai Min recognized his friend Ares among them. They embraced joyfully, and Ares exclaimed that Karun, their leader, would be glad to see him. Nam Tai Min was surprised that Karun was still alive, and Ares, noticing Lee Ho-yol, praised him for the incredible Pillar of Light. Nam Tai Min, embarrassed, tried to explain that barbarians do not know etiquette, but Lee Ho-yol reassured him, saying that he understood their culture and respected their addressing him as their leader. Ares revealed that their leader, Karun, had been conducting secret raids for years to rescue the survivors of permafrost. They lived in the forest nearby, trading with the city, but one day they noticed how permafrost was ablaze and felt an ominous aura. Under the command of Karun, they rushed into the city, where they saw a horrifying picture. Generals in the form of birds clutched warriors in their claws, and demon animals hung up the bodies of the inhabitants. The barbarians fought to save the survivors, but the demons proved too strong, killing many, including the gravely wounded Karun. They continued to protect the survivors, but without fire, which demons are sensitive to, people died of hunger and cold, losing hope. The appearance of Lee Ho-yol's light gave them a new purpose, and Ares, on behalf of the barbarians and the people of permafrost, thanked him. He stated that if Lee Ho-yol intended to defeat the demon king Dekaravia, who controlled birds as familiars, the barbarians would fight shoulder to shoulder with him. Although they, accustomed to ground combat, find it difficult to confront flying enemies, they are ready to pile up mountains of corpses to get them. Lee Ho-yol, refusing to collect the corpses, said he had other priorities. He ordered Alkari to transport the survivors to Yuzra through the portals and asked King Hakuna to provide them with housing and food. Ares assured that he would do everything possible. Lee Ho-yol assigned Nam Tai Min and the Gaon Guild to protect the survivors during the evacuation, knowing that he was worried about his barbarian friends. Nam Tai Min thanked him. Kichi asked if Lee Ho-yol would go with them, but he replied that he had unfinished business. Suddenly, another general appeared above him, a level 500 Hellbird whose aura led here. Lee Ho-yol, having gathered the rest of his mana, ordered everyone to stay where they were. Ares shouted at the barbarians to prepare to evacuate through the portal to Yuzra, and they began to leave. At this moment, the class quest Barbarian Secret Technique appeared in front of Nam Tai Min. He was stunned, as only one person in the class could receive such a quest. Asking Ares where Karun was, he learned that the leader was on a sortie. Nam Tai Min, ignoring Ares' warnings about the danger, rushed to look for him. Recalling how Karun told him about the barbarian secret technique, but refused to teach it, saying that Nam Tai Min needed to grow up 40 years. Running out onto the field, he saw Karun, dead, hanging on a cross. Namte Min, not believing his eyes, was filled with rage. A huge demon appeared before him, and the quest said that the leader left the world, and the new young leader must show a wild nature. Harkon Kingsguard noticed that something was wrong with Lee Ho Yol. He assured me that everything was fine, but an ominous feeling told me that the plan was falling apart. Harkon explained that there were too many enemies around, probably demon generals, and if Lee Ho Yol created a magic ladder like before, the knights would deal with them. But Lee Ho Yol objected, "The sky is the domain of demons, and they are not so easily brought down to earth." The furious demons scoffed, declaring that a ground creature like him would not make them descend. They rushed to attack, but Lee Ho Yol, knowing that demons were sensitive to light, directed his glow at them. Hellbird, the commander of the demon army, and the other monsters were stunned. Lee Ho Yol realized that it was working and decided to continue to bring them down to earth where the knights could fight. Jessica used magic lightning to strike down 5 commanders with one blow, surprised that one curse was enough. Lee Ho Yol, who didn't expect it to be so easy, wondered when he became so strong. The class quest has been updated. 4 generals remained to be eliminated. He hoped that Namtai Min was okay, but barbarians came out of the portal reporting that he had not returned. He went alone to look for Karen, who was delayed and probably got into trouble. Alkari noticed that Namtai Min was acting recklessly. Lee Ho Yol asked where he was going. Meanwhile, Namtai Min was hanging in the air, grabbed by the throat by the demon. The demon mocked his attempt to fight alone, calling it foolishness, and suggested that he beg for mercy like all land creatures. Namtai Min refused, saying that barbarians die in battle. The demon, pointing to Karun's corpse, called him a fool who had lost a doomed battle, and said that such weaklings should run with their tails between their legs. Namtai Min, in a rage, demanded not to laugh at the leader, but the demon continued, retelling Karun's last words about the reckless heir who would soon come. He called Namtai Min unworthy of being a leader, and laughed. Suddenly, Namtai Min pounced, biting off the demon's arm. He, in shock, took off, not understanding where his limb was. Namtai Min, holding his hand in his teeth, repeated that the demon should not dare to mock Karun. The demon bird called him a beast, but this only spurred Namtai Min on. His class quest, secret technique of the barbarians, activated the skill Call of the Wild, awakening the inner wildness and increasing the stat. He pounced on the demon, who, feeling the pressure, tried to keep his distance. Namtai Min snuck up from behind, broke off the wings, and the demon began to fall. But suddenly, a sharp object pierced Namtai Min. Turning around, he saw another demon, the level 500 Hellbird Amikana. Lee Ho Yol, who appeared next to him, said that he only let his guard down for a second. Amikan threw Namtai Min away, and he collapsed, bleeding. He apologized to Karun, regretting that he had not become a worthy leader, and to Lee Ho Yol for his recklessness, worrying about how upset his brother Nam Cheol would be. Suddenly, Lee Ho Yol appeared in front of him, and Namtai Min, with his eyes wide open, did not understand how he got there. The demons turned around, noticing Lee Ho Yol, who was furious knowing what had happened. Namtai Min felt ashamed. He valued formalities, but fought like a beast. The Knights of the Lionheart came to the rescue. Lee Ho Yol explained that analyst Nam Cheol was worried, so he came. The demons were glad that they didn't have to look for him. Granfell ordered Amikon to close his mouth, and the interference magic blew his head off. The second demon screamed, not believing in the death of his comrade, but Lee Ho Yol attacked, declaring that he would show who was the trembling creature here. At the southern gate, the Shining Guild was struggling to fight off another Hellbird. Camilla fired arrows, but the demon called them pathetic, easily dodging them. While he was distracted, another fighter struck him down, and Camilla finished off the monster, noting that there would be more like it ahead. Rox reported that the 8th rank of their guild was seriously injured. 2 received minor injuries, and they called for a healer. Drone reporters announced in a special edition of Arcana that Rox of the Shining Ones had killed the commander, but 10 men were injured, and the retreat was still unclear. They were surprised why the number of viewers was falling despite the exclusive broadcast. After checking the chat, they saw Lee Ho Yol's discussions and Hui Gang's broadcast. He filmed Lee Ho Yol stepping on the head of a demon who was begging for mercy. After gathering his mana, Lee Ho Yol finished him off with 1 blow, and Hui Gang glorified the hero in the video.